Oh my word, I am peaking. I did the practice laugh and everything, and I'm just straight up there with my evil lighting. So, if you haven't tuned in to the previous, also if you've listened to the podcast, that I've got very dark red lighting everywhere, and there's fire beneath us because last time we talked about the state of AEW and WWE in the most positive, chirpy way we possibly could. it was just everything was chirpy and amazing. We were meant to do like half the show on the good stuff, half the show on the bad stuff. There was so much good stuff to talk about that we left feeling amazing about wrestling after 2.5 hours. If you listen to our state of AEW and WWE going into 2022 from 2 weeks ago, you will leave feeling amazing about professional wrestling. You will just love that world. This week, oh my,
Boy.
Oh boy.
And then there's now.
And then there's now. I'm once again joined by Rance Morris, aka Ray Cash, from Chairshot Radio. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I always love being on with you. It's always fun, and tonight's gonna be fun for sure. But man, like, what a doozy of a show we chose to do tonight.
Oh my word. So, I was because I asked Rance to be on to do this. Like I did it like a month in advance just to check he was definitely fine and everything. Because these take a bit of time, so it kind of makes sense to just make sure that we are both available. We can both do it. And 2 weeks ago, there was so much happening. I was like, oh my god, so much has happened in a month. So much has happened in 2 weeks. Jesus Christ! Like this is insane. Oh my word! Right. So. We've got so many different things to talk about. There are kind of like I guess, across company things to talk about a little bit. We don't. The good news is because I know negatives attract a lot better than positives when it comes to the internet world. If you're listening to this one, having not listening to the positive episode, we will not be doing any numbers talk. No numbers. We did it in the first episode. Like the first 20 minutes of that is just getting through the numbers, the audience thing, whether like the good and the bad in that. There's no need to do it here. We've talked about everything, so we can just talk about contracts. Hooray, contracts! That's the closest we get to numbers. We get to talk about releases, we get to talk about creative stuff, we get to talk about management, and I was going to say, when I talk about mismanagement, I just mean management as a whole, like the critiques of that have come up this past year, going into 2022. Mm-hmm. And well, even though we're going to the depths of hell, this is still with a positive critique of
the depths of hell part kills me, dog.
There's fire underneath us, quite literally.
I see it. Yes. I got you down on my phone. I see it. Yes.
So I've just realised I got nothing up, so I can't actually tell. There we go. But yeah, still, the depths of hell we are going tonight, but with the positive spin of this is all critique, things that can be changed or addressed for the future. This isn't just a point and go, that thing bad, that thing awful, and leave it. Like, no. It's all with a positive spin on the end. Even if my lighting, the background, the fire, everything are red borders, just to indicate we are evil today.
Just imagine Kane's music playing in the background.
Yes.
In your mind.
Yeah, that is today. So, first off, in terms of blatant things, okay. So, before I even did this, I was like, what's the main thing being talked about today? That I saw on my Twitter. I will put an asterisk saying that I quite heavily curate my Twitter feed, probably because I used to invite opinions that weren't my own. I used to invite them onto my Twitter feed quite strongly because I thought it's quite good to check yourself. Is what I thought. What actually happened was those, and for me it's the advice that I kind of took on board. You don't have to treat social media this way, but for me, what really helped me was getting rid of all of that kind of thing. The type of thing that would just kind of get your anxiety a little bit, and you feel it inside. Yeah, where you feel it getting to you. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I decided to remove those things from my Twitter feed. Because I was like, you know what? This probably isn't a good emotion to be bringing on myself every time I check on Twitter. So a lot of the other... For example, it's like, if you're into politics and then for the past few years you followed the White House for that reason, it was fine to unfollow. It was perfectly fine. Like, if you're getting that, you still get the news, you still know what's going on. It's perfectly fine on this one specific social media place. It's fine to curate it. So that's what I did. Like, any negative thing that was kind of given me certain feelings. So I don't see a lot of certain sides of Twitter. Like, I don't really see stan accounts type of thing.
Okay.
So yeah,
Well, that's nice. That's always nice because the standing counts are crazy.
and that's why. Like they create a feeling, and I was like, you know what? Because there's that feeling generated from it, oh, kind of thing. So with that out of the way, with that asterisk, the thing I saw being talked about today was the difference between AEW and WWE and how they address contracts. So,
yeah, that's been a thing. That's been a thing.
like, cool. Just checking that wasn't just me seeing my select people. So no,
No,
that's been a
that's definitely been a thing today. Yes.
awesome. Yeah. So the discussion being had is what is the difference between the two, and I said we're going to the depths of hell. So let's start with the negatives. So negative side, WWE. So they immediately headline sentence, they don't honour the contracts, which is just, if you are under them, that is massive. Obviously, I'm not talking about the financial side. They more than honour it on the financial side. What I'm talking about is job security.
Yes.
If you are a wrestler in this world, I went a bit too wide there with world, in the American landscape right now. I did the American sports thing of like the World Series. Only America plays it.
The World Series of the United States of America.
Yeah.
The
World Series. I like that actually. The full title. It's just a shortened thing. But yeah, so with they don't. You don't have job security. Is the best way to put it. Anyone can be released, and this past year has really shown that. And we'll get on. There were reasons given why, but obviously this is just like the introductory stage of it. Like the contracts aren't being honoured. You could be released at any point from them, and that's that. Obviously, there's the other things that you can't work for any other company. You can't the side hustles, I call them. Like you can't do any of that. There's no Twitch. There's no OnlyFans allowed. So extra side things have to all be funneled through WWE. So it's all like one massive promotional thing. But also, you could be released at any moment. So that job security is just not there, which is insane, really. It's just to be in that position. But the reason it really sticks out as much as it does is because AEW, as in right now specifically, the other side of the coin, so AEW are now old enough where they're reaching that 3-year period where contracts are coming to an end and certain people aren't being renewed. And for me, that means that the WWE side sticks out a bit more because we are seeing in the same industry on TV, we are seeing people's contracts being honoured. Yes, obviously, this has left to some negatives for AEW, but, and that's putting it lightly, but also, but for me, that is an absolutely major positive that they are honouring the contracts. You do have a job security for as long as it does. It's like almost every other office job, essentially, in that you've got your contract, you know how long your contract will be there for, it's there in front of you, and unless there's misconduct on one of your parts, then you're going to have that contract honoured to you. And in terms of job security, that means so much, really, and it's a really good kind of showing for AEW to be doing that. Also, not forgetting the wrestlers do have their side hustles. They are allowed to work elsewhere. The other financials coming in, but most importantly, to the contracts, AEW is letting them run out and telling them ahead of time, and they're having the talks, just like in an office job. The talks are being had. You know that your contract is running out. As an employee, you know that the time to look for other work will be in this period. In WWE, suddenly you have no job and you have to start looking elsewhere just because you picked up the phone. Which is such an absolutely crazy word. JTG, you got it, yeah. I love that tweet. It's just like, damn it, all these years after not picking up the phone and this one time, yeah. But still, Rance, what do you think on this situation in terms of just the job security in WWE?
I mean, you laid it out. You laid it out pretty accurately, pretty perfectly. I think they're more similar than people want to let on because ultimately, at the end of it, both of them are out of a job. Not renewing a contract is letting somebody go. It's just a very nice way to let somebody go. However, AEW honoring the contract is very noble, and it's something that most wrestling companies or entertainment companies or even sporting companies don't really tend to do. So I appreciate that. I'm sure the wrestlers appreciate that. since we're talking negative today,
I'm not going to laugh every time.
there you go. I'd wonder. I think of a person like Sunny Kiss loves being with AEW. She is so into the company and the camaraderie and the loving atmosphere that she feels there. I'm choosing to use she. She said she's fine with he, she, or they, whichever pronoun you want to use. But she's never used. You know, when you look like a person like Peter Avalon, who's one of the first people recently who's been kind of contract has ended. Peter Avalon was never used. So in many ways, and then also ever since that GCW show where everybody got sick, you know, like everybody was sick and had COVID. Tony Khan let him go wrestle. Don't let everybody go wrestle every indie show like they were doing. It's very filtered now. So it's not like Peter Avalon can go do every show in Poughkeepsie and every show in Kalamazoo and all these other city names that we make fun of here in the States. He can't do that. So by and large, if he's not working AEW or working the 2 or 3 indies that Tony says is cool, he's just sitting collecting a check like the WWE guys. So yes, I'm sure he appreciates the fact that he has his contract extended and gone. But then we have to look at the differences, and every contract is filtered differently. You get different. For example, I live in Houston. If I were to get a job in England, you'd have to pay me some relocation money, and that would offset my inconvenience for having to move. Right? There's a 90-day clause, which people make fun of, but it is something that they don't have to do, but they do. You get paid your full 90 days afterwards and whatnot. And on AEW side, and I'm not sticking up for WWE because we're about to roast the hell out of them. I know we're not at the point where we can cuss yet. We're about to roast the hell out of them.
Yeah, we're 10 minutes in. We'll get it's gonna bubble.
Yes, because they gonna get a lot of this work tonight. I'm just comparing and contrasting the differences. You get paid such a huge downside, and with WWE, you have to move. More than likely, most people have to move to Orlando. The bigger names and the names signed just from the main roster don't. But like the ones who are just getting signed have to move to Orlando. The AEW, you don't. You don't have to move to Jacksonville. You can do whatever. You can live wherever you want as long as you're at the shows, right? So there are different pros and cons. At the end of the day, both parties are going. I think the difference that a lot of fans don't think about when they compare the way WWE callously lets people go to the way AEW nicely escorts them out the door is neither situation allows the wrestler the opportunity to stay. If Tony Khan says you're not here no more, I'm not renewing your contract, you have taken away the opportunity for the wrestler to say I want to be here. That is releasing them. So in both ways, they're being released. It's just you want to be released and be like and get a thank you out the door and like not get escorted out by security, or you want to get thrown out like Jazz on the Fresh Prince. Either way, you still getting kicked out the door.
So you saying that it's like, there's no Jazz in the Fresh Prince reboot. It's just like
he's in it.
Oh, is he in it?
He's in it. But I don't know. He's probably gonna look. We'll talk about this when it comes.
It's maybe
I'm
not
so hyped for the damn show. I'm hyped for the show.
Yeah, this is probably not an on-air. Just random sidebar.
Hey, you know what? Hey, Ray and Imp review the new Fresh Prince. Maybe that's coming on a show near you.
And I was also whilst you were talking, I was just like, I really should have called it Pros and Cons, as in Tony Khan. And I was like, I'm really annoyed myself.
Genius.
Also, D-Mac in the chat with a thumbs up. So I'll put my extremely red thumb, so I can see it in front of me, up there. It's the lighting. This isn't natural. It's not a really hot room. But anyway, so one of the things that immediately comes out of this, jumping off of Vance's point, the name B-Fab, for me, is just this absolutely encapsulates, which is a difficult word to say at midnight, what we're kind of hinting at with the callousness of WWE. So for me, the absolutely massive difference is obviously the end situation as Vaz was talking about, saying However, the way it is carried out and I say torment, but the damage that can be done aside from just losing your job, which is obviously massive, but there's other stuff to that. My big
Absolutely.
B-Fab signed a new contract. The very next week she's gone. That's insane. That's just...
Can I give you another example? Alice in Danger.
That was my next jump. Yes.
Go ahead then if you want to, by all means. But that's more egregious than B-Fab to me because you know what? Things happen. Alice in Danger is like fire.
Yeah. I absolutely... For me, that this is the worst... I mean, there was I can't remember, there was a Latina wrestler, I can't remember her name, but she moved from Mexico.
Catalina Garcia.
That's the one. Yeah, and she moved as a teenager, completely relocated her life to WWE, and then suddenly she's got like a month to find work or leave the country, which is mental. Absolutely, because you made her relocate and then just went nah. Like, you know,
that's the thing we don't talk about enough about the foreigners coming to this country and having the work visas and the country and the company paying for the work visa. It's not talked about enough.
Yeah, like as soon as they're released, they're left out in the wild. Like the Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, they massively brought this up because as Australian talent, they were left out in the cold. There was no support for them whatsoever from WWE. Same with Buddy Murphy. He piped up when the Iconics brought it up, and also they're doing amazing work in Impact. Let's bring that up. Because I found it really weird how I heard quite a few, really only Americans, going, I just find their voices really irritating and annoying. I was like, they're hilarious. What are you talking about?
They're irritating and annoying in the right way.
Yeah, in the absolute perfect way, yeah. It's not X-Pac heat. This is the absolute perfect. I was watching the Women's Royal Rumble from last year to get hyped for this year's Royal Rumble. It's weird going back to the Thunderdome. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
But I've always called it like a sci-fi dystopian nightmare because it's just it is the future Arnold Schwarzenegger movies warned us about. That's what this is.
This is true.
It's
Running Man. This is very true.
Yeah, it's Running Man, but with more screens rather than a live studio audience. It's insane. Anyway, the Hall of Fame was the worst part in terms of like reaching dystopian level. That's when it hit me. Anyway, tracking back. So Billie Kay coming out and just doing all of her, giving her CVs. I've forgotten what they're called in America.
Resume,
that's it, yeah. Giving a resume to all different... And I was just like, this character was brilliant. I love this. And I remember at the time, she then just got released when she was arguably doing her best work, especially since the Iconics is on the main roster. I don't think the Iconics were ever really given anything, apart from winning the titles. And in terms of...
But they won the titles at WrestleMania. That's pretty big.
I was trying to think. What I mean is in terms of week-to-week booking on the
stories.
shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll just say, Rance jumping in for comment, maybe actually think what I'm trying to say. It helped. I found my words.
I got your back, man.
You got me. You got me,
brother.
It's coming in handy for the French Prince review. Jumping in, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, with that situation with them, that was just being left out in the cold. With for me, that's absolutely insane. Like, to not even offer support when you've then decided to not honour their contract, you then don't offer support for even if it's just a period of time, to just leave them out there. That's insane. But yeah, the same thing happened to the name I've already forgotten of the Mexican wrestler.
Catalina.
Catalina, that's it. Yeah. But also, yeah, for me. Alison Danger was what I was meant to be talking about. It's been like 3 minutes of everybody else but Alison Danger. She was offered the job in October? Was it October, November? It was really October, November, to work down in NXT. And she thought about it, didn't really want to go, and they chased her, and then eventually was like, you know what? No, I will go for this. Relocated her entire family. She's got kids, she's got a husband. They all relocated to Florida. They don't live in Florida. I can't remember where, but it wasn't near. A massive relocation. And she was there for what, a month? What was it?
She got the call. She was released, picking her daughter up from the first day of school.
It's like that is absolutely egregious. There's no other word for it. I mean,
just let that sit with you for a minute. Just let that sit with you listening for a minute. She got the call for her release, picking up her daughter from the first day of new school that she's relocated to. Do you understand how little amount of time that has to be for her first day, for her to be working there and be fired that quickly? It's downright disgusting and it's insulting almost.
Yeah, Yeah, it is. It's just a complete disregard for the talent, really, when you don't put those things in there. And DMAC in the chat with yes, 100%. I also don't expect it to happen unless the workers push for it. But yeah,
That's great. That's a
yes.
great point. Yeah, I think
Yeah, I'll
so.
just say
Yeah,
it for.
should do it.
I'll read it out loud for the podcast viewers, listeners in the future. Foreign talents may have to start trying to negotiate a minimum term or some kind of assurance before signing. Relocated across the globe and then being cut absolutely sucks. I threw in the
Great
absolutely
point.
just to really
Yeah.
sell the emphasis of it. It's like, my word, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, assurance, especially when this is what unions address, and if WWE keep kind of not, I've got it. Just keep being bad to the employees. My brain just shut down for a second. It's lost all words and descriptors. But yeah, if they keep doing that, if they keep mistreating, it's mistreating. Is that blatant a word? If they keep mistreating their employees like this, this is what pushes to unions. Eventually, they have enough and they form a union.
Man, that's the slippery slope, my brother.
Yeah, it's,
Slippery.
it is. I live in a very pro-union country, which is
I'm
Which-
pro-union myself, but I just don't think it ever work in wrestling because there's too many hurdles. There's too many different opinions. There's too many different things. You can't just have a WWE union because then
Oh yeah, it wouldn't have to be just
the way
WWE.
it'd have to be an all wrestlers union, and then there's no negotiation. You can't get paid per the way you get paid per show is the way you get paid is going to be everything's going to be so different, and it doesn't affect 75% of the roster. So if the guys at the top ain't trying to work with the guys at the bottom, and I love Roman, I'm throwing him out because he's the biggest star in the company. Roman not going to play ball. Why would he? He got a bus. They paid for a bus for him. Why would he play ball? For the people, and he's one of the people that everybody mentions as the locker room leader type that actually helps the people at the bottom. But why would they play ball for the people at the bottom? Everybody gotta be on the same page. And the biggest issue with the boys, negative, right? With the boys and the girls of the companies, especially WWE, is ultimately everybody for themselves. And sure, Vince has fostered that to a bit, but in that company where you can only have one champion, one person at the top, one person who gets the majority of the this or the that, and that's not just in that WWE, that's in every wrestling company. In every wrestling company, there's one person at the top. There's a handful of people who make the most money, and you know, the AEW has 120 people signed. WWE has maybe 150 people signed. Everybody can't be the top 1, 2, 3 person. But they're all trying to be, right, or all trying to make it there. So, as in a perfect world, would it be unionized? Hell yes. In a perfect world, I don't think it ever works.
I feel like there's a reason Cody got because when I say Cody got the closest in terms of an example of it was through the Actors Guild, and if it were to happen, it would probably have to be a branch through that somehow in terms of figuring it out, which is, and of course, the big hurdle that always comes across is the employees. They have to be together on it, because if they're not, then and if you have the example of the Lorne Michaels SNL environment of everyone competing with each other to get the time on TV and doing that, I was just like, if his world found a union in terms of the SNL guys, they're always competing with each other as well, then it's, for me, it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it won't take years, if not decades, to figure out. But it means it's possible. And wrestling world is full of so much history. It's so complex. This is not a quick thing to do. But the ball, I'd say, is already rolling because there is mistreatment happening from a top company. And
yeah, absolutely.
Like in my country, it was I guess the miners being overworked by the mine owners or whoever the bosses were. Eventually they had enough, and that's kind of it just snowballs over time, and eventually enough is enough, and everybody does get on board when it gets bad enough. Obviously that's a very different world from professional wrestling, and especially as if you're going to unionize in wrestling, it's such a wide breadth. It's kind of like, well, what area are you talking about? What level of wrestling? These are all questions that will get answered, and that's why I was like, it could take a decade to figure out in terms of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Because it is really complex.
It's a conversation worth having, but that conversation is going to be a long.
Oh yes, and it should be long because to get it right, Because you don't
Yeah.
want something like this to be, yeah. Anyway, so moving on to the next one. And Rich Latter's in the chat. What are you doing here, Rich?
What up, Rich? Hey,
Yeah.
his point. I stand corrected. You're right. The only locker room leader is Vince. Fact. I cannot dispute that one bit.
CM Punk's comment from today as well, just on the court, on Wrestler's Court. It's like, that's one of the most most insecure, toxic, masculine pieces of crap. So, we love you, CM Punk. We're so happy that he's found his second wind in terms of happiness in wrestling. He's a gem right now. Also, the fact he's probably got a burner somewhere, so anyone could be CM Punk. I could be CM Punk. Anyone could be CM Punk.
For those of you basketball fans, he's definitely Kevin Durant right now. He definitely got a burner account or two that he's like letting him fly. Oh yeah.
My one's Gabe Sapolsky. It's just like, it's not quite.
Oh
yeah. Gabe with his, I mean, obviously Gabe was using them to shit on people. But we're 25 minutes in, I can swear. It's just going on.
Oh, good. Okay, we're good now. All right.
Yeah, we're at that point. Anyway, into the depths of hell. So that was the WWE side. It's in such a bad state. We naturally, without having to force it, ended up on talking about unions. Which tells you how egregious things currently are in terms of mistreating their employees, especially with their contracts. They could, again, if you get the massive difference, and it's quite irritating that it's even coming across my feed, the argument of, well, how's WWE and AEW's things any different? Like, well, one is honouring a contract and they know when they're going to get released. There's time to plan. There's time to come to terms with it, whatever. One is suddenly, out of nowhere, you no longer have a job. And sometimes that's 1 week after you sign a new contract. Sometimes your daughter is starting her first day at school when you get the call that you've been released. Like, if you can't see the difference between those two worlds, I don't know what to say. I feel like we've kind of jumped into it enough here.
Yeah.
But also,
well, we got more. We got more contract talk. Again. People are going to WWE is going to get destroyed tonight with this contract situation. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. I mean, Mustafa Ali, which is the flip side of this.
Keep it going. Brian Kendrick too, by the way, apparently.
Oh yeah, that's the news that came out today that Brian Kendrick has also asked for his release and is currently sitting in waiting, which is it's especially from the past 2 years where they released God knows how many wrestlers in a pandemic for budget cut reasons, when them deciding to not build an extension on their headquarters saved them more money than releasing one wrestler. Which is mental. Absolutely mental. I don't know, let me rephrase that, because one wrestler isn't that much. But releasing all of the wrestlers didn't even scratch the surface of the cost of them not extending their headquarters. It's absolute. The reasoning is so see-through in terms of what they're doing that as a fan, especially on the internet, with this nerding out with the rest of the IWC, that it's crazy that they think there won't be bad will from the fans from this, or there's some measurement. I guess
they know they don't care.
Oh, yeah, probably worse actually. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's much worse. They don't give a shit because they know people still gonna watch, people gonna still support. They don't care.
Yeah, for the Mustafa Ali thing for me it's emblematic of something which is much worse, where they've released so many people, and the reason is BS. When with releasing you for budget cuts, and the wrestlers themselves, when they've been able to, have just immediately spoken out, going, "I know I wasn't released for any of that. If I was released, it was to make a good shareholder number, or make them happy, to make it look like they're doing something to help the price." Which is, as the wrestlers themselves, like, that's ridiculous. In terms it doesn't paint a picture of a company that cares about their employees, especially in a wrestling world where they're putting their bodies on the line. So you would expect another level compared to, I'd say, an office job. But it's crazy. It's crazy that we do that. Mustafa Ali, then, isn't granted his release when they're not using him. They've got no plans for him. And he's unhappy. And recently, apparently, had a falling out with a higher up. So it makes sense. If everyone's happy with that situation, why not let him go? We know why. The AEW or Impact or someone will pick him up because he's so incredibly talented and give him an opportunity.
I don't think that's the reason anymore. I don't think that's the reason anymore because they've given everybody AEW already. Vince joked about it in a damn call.
They
I don't think
did.
they care about that.
Well, why are
I
they
don't think
holding
care
him
about
then?
that.
Well, unless it's control.
Can I give my idea?
Yeah, unless it's control. I need to stop. I need to stop jumping on a tangent, going, "Oh, maybe it's this. I'll talk about this." No, I'll let Vance talk. Like, yeah.
No, maybe it is. Maybe it is. This is the perspective I have from knowing all of the facts. So first and foremost, you have to you. I don't want to make a 2 minute conversation, a 1 minute conversation, a 10 minute conversation, but knowing who Mustafa Ali is as a person, right? He is so intrinsically caring about the way he's perceived, the way people like him, the way Muslims and Southeastern Asians and people, brown people of color, of that color and that descent are looked at, especially in America. That matters to him more than anything else, more than the great matches he can have or who he can work with. That matters first and foremost. This is out of his mouth, right? So much to the point where there was a show he had when he was younger where he was heel and he looked out in the crowd and there were kids booing him, and it really made him question, are they booing the character or are they booing me, and what am I teaching them? Which is why he was so adamant, I'll never be heel unless the character has nothing to do with my race, my nationality, or my religious beliefs. It can't have anything to do with that. Other than that, so the report, if you believe the report does come from reputable people, as reputable as you can be in wrestling journalism, right? But was that him and Vince had an argument because apparently Vince wanted him to do something he just wasn't rocking with, and he stood up for himself. Now, on top of that, Ali has been known to, again, according to other reports, come to them regularly with ideas, with character ideas, with storylines, with anything, and not just for him, but for other people, just trying to be involved and be a part of the process. So, if Vince had an idea that he wanted Ali to do, that like insulted him so much that Ali had to be sent home and hasn't been seen. Remember, we were told he was gone for paternity leave. He was gone for a week. He was ready to come back the week after. That's been almost a couple months now, longer than that. So this is just my perception. Nobody's told me this. I have no inside skin in the game. This is just a belief. My belief is they don't want to release him because they know they fucked up and they want to fix it. And I can understand that from Vince's perspective, but I also am completely 1,000% on Ali's side. I've been here this long. You never really want to use me anyway. The times you did use me, granted, the injury, it happens, right? But the whole Ali mania, Kofi mania, you got to charge it to the game. But him supposed to win the Money in the Bank and then them plugging Brock last minute, stuff that happens too much. Giving him retribution and then like cutting the legs underneath him the second you give it to him, like all these things, you've never given him opportunities to shine the way he wanted to and the way you knew he could. Now he's gotten opportunities. Let's not play that game like he hasn't even been on TV. He's gotten opportunities, but nothing close to the level of what he could have done, and nothing to the level of what you could have done with him to make money or be successful, right? So it's been this long now. This hasn't been 6 months, a year. This has been years now. And then you insulted him out the door because the one thing he's had specials on your network about that very premise that he feels. And then you insult him to the point where like he wants to go now. Let the man go.
Yeah, it's crazy, really.
Yeah, let him go. Like, and then if you want to fix it later. The one thing, as much as Vince is the devil, the one thing Vince has always had a propensity to is no matter how bad things are with people, he'll find a way to make it work if they want to make it work again. So if it happens again down in the future, cool. But right now, the best thing you can do for that man, you owe that man to let him go and live his life.
Yeah, and Rich in the chat just like, you are not signing with All Elite Wrestling. He wants to Ali. It's just, it's the sheer amount of amazing talent who, by the way, the 3-month period or 6-month period for quite a lot of the wrestlers, like Keith Lee, that branch of people that were released, that ends next week. Like,
yep.
Yeah, it's coming. The wave is happening.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a crazy February.
Oh yes, yeah. In terms of like news with all of it, because they've released so many talented wrestlers, they won't all go to AEW, so they won't get all of the press. Like Impact's gonna get some great buzz off of this because there's so many.
GCW is gonna get some run,
Oh,
right? A
100%.
lot of
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Some people might go to Impact, like Jonah and Ali, not
Mm,
Ali, Murphy are
mm.
doing some work with Impact. I'm not Impact, but New Japan too.
Yes,
Like
yeah.
it's work out here. What your boy Gresham is doing with Terminus.
Mm,
Apparently, the first show was so good. Like they're doing great now. It's a
yeah.
lot of work out here.
Yeah, like a Swerve is already announced for the next Terminus show. Like
And
there's,
Leo.
yeah, oh, it is so much. Yeah, it's yeah. Actually, we do need to switch to AW at some point. But there's just,
We'll
yeah,
get there, but no,
they'll get their dues. They get
there
their
needs to
dues.
be an appropriate amount of
Mm.
like ass kicking
Oh yeah.
on their week for this contract situation.
Oh, but yeah, it's the whole Ali thing is it's do not. I think the massive context with this one is the fact they have released so many wrestlers and
Yep.
given a BS reason as to why they were released. To get released from your job that has absolutely nothing to do with your performance as well. Like Bray Wyatt, in terms of back in whenever he was released back at the start of the summer or end of spring, like he was one of their highest merch sellers. And you saw the chart for the merch that came out like last week, a week before for 2021. Alexa Bliss was second or third in terms of merch selling out of all of WWE merchandise in terms of like revenue generated, which is
I absolutely believe she's up there, but from what I've heard, that wasn't a real report.
oh that was Bliss's. I realised as well if anyone heard it, I said Bliss's full name and I've got an echo in my room, so it turned on.
Lily's watching you, bro. Watch out.
Telling me about Bliss. I don't want to know about Bliss right now. I'm busy. Oh man, but yeah, because yeah, I mean that wouldn't surprise me if Bliss's merchandise is high, purely
Oh yeah.
because yeah, we knew that. Like the amount that doll show sold is incredible, and that data came out very quickly because obviously WWE would be really proud of that. Obviously, that data would get out, but yeah, because he was such a high merchandise seller, just like Bliss was. That act did numbers both together and apart. He got released, and that message obviously there may be behind reasons, but the message that sends to all of the others. Well, if he could go, what does that say about us? Like us who are now and then on TV. It's yeah. The kind of main point we're getting back around to of the job security part of it, to be in that environment, oh man, that sucks. And for me, the reason it jumps up even more is because Tony Storm, like a month ago, asked for her release and was granted it. And the reason given was, well, the reason that was given to the dirt sheets and the outlets who asked for more information was that, well, we've been given so many releases that the look, if we were to say no,
Man.
it's just, and that was only a month ago. And now look where we are, where there's such like a grievance. We don't know what it is, like in terms of exact details, but we know there's a grievance there, and he's not being
And
allowed to go.
and Tony was in the story with the champ.
Yeah, admittedly, a crap story, but a story nonetheless. You know, like she's a featured
Man,
player. Like
look.
the quality doesn't come into it really for the specific thing, but like she was a featured person. That story I think came to an end, and immediately she asked for a release.
It wasn't to an end yet.
Oh,
That's
right.
I mean, perception wise, sure. The most important currency in professional wrestling isn't money; it's TV time. So she was on TV regularly with their number one star on that brand. So look, no matter how bad it was from an enjoyment perspective or whatever, she had the best equity of anybody at that moment because she was with Charlotte in the women's division. And then she was like, I want to go home. And I'm like, okay. It's baffling. And she's not the first person. It's somebody else too that I know it's been a couple other names that escaped me, but like it's baffling to me how you're just like literally like, yeah, you're good. Nope, you stay. Nope, you can go. Nope, you can stay.
Yeah.
Like,
How can you feel
and
safe in your job in that environment?
and I understand there's not gonna be a lot of rhyme or reasoning, especially to the mass releases, because Whatever the point reason they're doing behind this, I don't know. I don't think they're for sale, but whatever the fuck you want to
Mm.
believe. But there's no rhyme or reasoning clearly to it other than cost ratio analysis. I don't know what the fuck. I'm not a financial person, but like we need to stop lying to us about this budget cut bullshit because we see the financials, right? Number one, and number two, can you have some consistency with what the fuck you want to do? If you don't want to release people, then don't release them. If you want to release people, then release them. But you can't pick and choose. I'm so confused. I'm
Yeah.
so confused. So if Roman said today, I'm out, are you gonna let him go or not? I'm confused. I don't know what are we doing?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that's a massive. I realised I could jump into a tangent so easy at this point. The thing that, in terms of the what are you actually doing here, for me, that screams so much of NXT 2.0. As in, I look at it and go, I can see it's not for me, but I don't know if you know what the target audience is for the product. In terms of designing a product, what is the target audience? Because there's there's the things you would assume are aimed at, in terms of that go for that younger audience, the certain things being featured, and the idea to attract that younger audience in practice. But of course, that's also paired with very simple or simplistic kind of storytelling and caricature characters in a way. They're not all as simple as that, but there's a lot of stereotypes being played out on NXT right now, and that, I mean, we could get into that later. But
Ooh,
there's, when I say simplistic characters, that's kind of what I mean. As in, there's not a lot of depth to that show where there kind of used to be with NXT, just because they were telling those longer stories. It just naturally happened.
sure,
Um,
sure.
NXT
But
2.0 is a lot more like the main roster. Uh,
that's the
of
point. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not supposed to be it's not supposed to be a brand with
hmm,
like depth. It's supposed to
yeah.
be a place where you get to know people and then they'll be gone.
But I watch it and I'm like, I don't know the target audience for this show. What is the target
Do you?
audience for this? Does, like, design, in terms of like design is one audience and the actual stories being presented is a different one.
Well,
So there is and I just, for me there was just like a big clash of, well, what are you actually aiming at with this?
I know many people are gonna think I'm crazy for this, and you know what? I may be. I've never
We've got like two
lied
hours to
about me,
go. You could say something worse.
right?
Yeah.
Right. I've never. Look. I know my shit is off the wall sometimes. I get it, but I don't think there is a target audience in terms of a demographic. I
Mm.
think the only thing WWE cares about with NXT UK, NXT 2.0,
They
sorry,
don't care about
2.0.
NXT UK. No one cares
Well,
about that.
right. Well, I mean, it gave him Rhea Ripley and Gunther, so they're good, right?
Oh, God.
Um,
We'll
boy.
address Gunter like after we touch AEW contract stuff. So yeah,
Indeed, we
yeah.
will. But no, I don't think I don't think they care about the age of who's watching it like the other shows and other companies do. I just think they care about are people getting to know the people
Mm,
on the show, so
mm,
that if you think about it, there's been more synergy between NXT 2.0 and the main roster in the past month than there was the entire 7-8 years
mm.
that was black and gold, because they know these guys are going to be next up on the main roster. So let's put them in situations where you can know who they are. Let's give them very easy and simple um, gimmicks or character traits. So the character traits of some of the wrestlers in NXT 2.0 is there's the party girls, there's a girl who sleeps all the damn time, there's an Italian mafia dude. Like, it's the simplest shit in the
Mm.
world. And so, like, it doesn't take that's it to explain Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter to a person who never watched wrestling is a million times easier than to explain Bayley when she first got called up to the main roster. Because you got to explain 3 years of backstory with Bayley, with Casey and or Cora Jade.
Mm.
She's a wrestling fan her whole life and she likes skating. Boom. All right, cool. With Bayley, you got to explain, but she was this and she was that, and then everybody hated her, and then and I think that's the point. So I don't know if a target demo matters as much to them right now as people just understanding who the characters are. But I could be off on that.
Because I feel like there's two parts to this. There's the actually making it work in WWE, because again, when we talk about how great the former NXT was, for me, I wrote a column last year titled "NXT is dead." I got a lot of hate for that because I actually titled it "The NXT era is dead," and in the Photoshop I removed "era." So, and suddenly as in that column went viral on Facebook, and because they just looked at the picture and just immediately reacted, and obviously I got called an idiot, but I have to hard disagree, obviously, because I don't think I'm an idiot.
No.
But the point I was getting at in the column was that era where NXT was essentially the alternative, the cool thing to go to, that died the second AEW was born. We got an absolutely awesome 1 year period where, or maybe even way less than a year, I can't remember how long it was, where NXT were putting on incredible matches against AEW as well, and you were getting amazing wrestling every single week from two different sources. How could I, as a fan, complain about this? I was covering both. I was covering NXT on the podcast version. I was covering the AEW in written form. I was having a blast. I absolutely loved that era, 2019, going into 2020. That era, pre-pandemic, that era was amazing, really, from October to the start of the new year. Really, really strong. However, in that last period, WWE didn't know what they wanted NXT to be. And Rance brought up just a thing in just passing of, well, NXT now has had way more synergy with the main roster than it's had in such a long time. And for me, in the column, I said, they just need to make a decision. What is it? What is NXT? And the kind of parting words I was making was, for better or worse, we've got our answer. At that time, NXT 2.0 hadn't aired yet. NXT hadn't finished. It had a few weeks to go. But we got our answer. And now they seem to know, in terms of relation to the main roster, what NXT is. And for me, the company is massively in the better for it. The flip side of it, though, does it make a good TV show?
I enjoy it, but I truly understand people who don't. I really do.
And in terms of designing a TV show, a massive part of that is thinking about the core demographic you're aiming for. Who is this show for? And you will have meetings upon meetings about this. And the fact that NXT 2.0 doesn't seem to know a lot of specifics in terms of what the kind of show they want to be, until they do, they're going to struggle on television, even though it worked with the company a lot better. So it's a weird thing where the synergy is so much better, which is a massive, massive positive long term. Short term, they've got that problem where, but as a TV show, it's not attracting people. What do you do?
Those are great points.
You're on the USA Network, they are going to want to get there, because I don't know what numbers they were expecting, but they're getting the 500,000, which in my head, I'm not panicking about AEW as long as they're above 500,000, and they got that.
Yeah, that's kind of like the baseline, right?
Yeah, is that the baseline?
400 to 500 is like the baseline.
Yeah,
and they're still in the transition. So for as weird as the shows may be, or as, I don't want to call them bad because I enjoy them, but as disjointed as the shows may be to the fans who may have may have liked Black and Gold or wanted something different or don't know what it is, they just switched the whole damn idea of this company or this brand or this show 5 months ago, 4 months ago. The person who's over the show had a heart attack or a cardiac situation, and then 80% of the people who were over the show got fired. So it's not gonna be perfect. And this, I'm not trying. Now this may be me sticking up for the show because I like it, but if you follow me, you know I'm an NXT mark. I've loved NXT since the days of Hulu when it was Johnny Curtis and Michael McGillicuddy versus the Usos.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I love NXT, and I think most people know this by now if you followed any of my work. I'm a much bigger fan, not even close, of the entertainment side. So the storylines, the character development, the promo aspect, than I am of the in-ring perspective, because I'm a fighting fan, so I can get that fixed by watching MMA or boxing or some form of that. So I'll enjoy it in the wrestling sense. The other part is what enthralls me more, and NXT 2.0 is giving me character development. We're learning who characters are and who people are. They're giving me stories. They ain't all great. Some of them are, but they ain't all great. But they're there, and it's different. So like it's scratching that itch enough for me to say I'm on board until you figure out what the fuck you really want to do. So.
And I mean, I was going to come back to NXT, but I'd probably make the show feel a bit disjointed if we're jumping back and forth when we're so close to talking about a topic. So, okay, we're right here. So, I do check out NXT not every single week, but I keep up with it. I kind of feel like in my current role, I have to. I'm not reviewing it every week like I was. I cover AEW Dynamite on the day I used to cover NXT. So, yeah, I'm still covering wrestling, just a different show. But this past week of NXT 2.0 is the first time in a long time I've watched a show and left feeling actively offended. In terms of, I don't mean in terms of, Karen going to the office. I need to speak to the manager. Like, I don't mean that. I don't mean that. I mean, it's just like in terms of like entertainment. In terms of, do I feel kind of a little bit insulted coming out of it because of the level of, I'll say, intellect before me, in a way.
The entire show or the end of the show?
So there were 2 points. There were 2 other points that kind of got me, and I brought it up earlier. I used the word stereotypes and caricatures, and the 2 things that got me, because there were some good things. There was a promo for somebody, and it's not the first promo he'd done, but it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But I can't remember who it was for the life of me. And I'm enjoying MSK. I'm not going to lie. I'm enjoying the crazy antics. So there is good on the show.
Yeah.
But obviously the main event was a really good match. So like, I'm not going to crap on that. But the other 2 things that got me, aside from the end, which we'll bloody get to. We'll get to the end. But I mean, how can we not after the past week? But they had I can't remember who he was. Oh damn it. So I'm going to have to say he was either Latino or Puerto Rican. I can't remember who it was. But the point of the promo was that somebody came in, and it might have been speaking to Joaquin Phoenix. I can't remember who it was. But he came in and he said to the guy spoke to him, and he said, sorry, I didn't understand a word you said, and then left. So me not to understand the person who's... And he didn't even have a strong accent. I can't remember who it was. It's a very quick thing. Very quick gag, and then left. I remember that. But I can't remember who it was. I can't remember. So my worst fear now.
I'm gonna try to find out what that was.
Yeah,
because I want to know what that was.
Yeah. So my worst thing now is this could be from a different week, and I've just put it in there. But it was just like a backstage thing, really quick, and it was just one line, and they moved on very quickly. It wasn't even the main point. Wasn't even the parting point. They moved on to the main thing. Was it? The guy pretending to be offended by woke things. I can't remember his name.
Well, Joe Gacy, but his promo this week was with Odyssey Jones.
It was. Yeah.
Backstage thing with Odyssey Jones.
Yeah, so it couldn't have been that. Yeah, yeah. So maybe I've related this from a different week, which would be really irritating to this point.
That's still pretty bad.
It's still pretty bad. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the sexy Japanese schoolgirl gimmick.
So the Saray thing bothers you? Okay, tell me why. Because I get it, but I want to hear from you because I don't like destroying things before something happens, but I get it.
To bring it simply, because again, the phrase of stereotypes and caricatures, that is a stereotype of Japanese women, the sexy schoolgirl thing, an absolutely massive stereotype, and the fact that they've got an incredible wrestler doing that, and also it's fantasizing a schoolgirl thing, which is problematic to begin with.
Well, Sailor Moon,
yeah, which was the thing with the Alexa Bliss character, which that was the critique that kept coming up with that. With this one, for me, because it seems a lot stronger associated with a stereotype of sexy Japanese schoolgirl, to to purposely do that gimmick, for me is it's because there was again. If I put understand what you said. If I put that on the wrong show, then apologies. But there was the Saray thing, then there was the main event. Those 3 things kind of together left. I was like, I don't have it wasn't just one stereotype thing that came in.
Sure.
There were
Well,
multiple examples of stereotype characters, and it's like, my
and
word, this is
Tony D'Angelo is a walking stereotype, but I think we accepted more because it's funny and
yeah.
your average Italian is a mafioso type, gimmick, right? But I got a question for you. I'm curious because I tend to agree with your point about Saray, but I haven't seen enough yet. There's one promo. I'm not in arms yet. If it goes where we think it's gonna go, or where people think then I can understand that. But my question to you is, a lot of the situations where there have been offensive gimmicks or storylines or things like that, some of them, I'm not gonna say a lot of them, it's been a handful, right? Have been found out to be the idea of the wrestler and not the company, right? So my question to you is, and this can even lead us into the Walter situation, if this storyline, if Tony D'Angelo's idea and his gimmick was his idea and he plays it, and if this thing by Saray was her idea and she's doing it, like the Kabuki Warriors, I hate that term, but that Asuka and Kairi said this was our choice. We chose this. If Gunther was Walter's idea, does it change how you feel about it?
So in terms of like context, and when it comes to characters and stereotypes, which is kind of like the issue with I pinpointed, I felt it on this week's NXT. My go-to example to make it a bit more complicated is Kofi Kingston, where he pitched the Jamaican accent, but it wasn't for a positive reason.
Yes, absolutely not.
So, because you know who you are pitching to, and that's a massive part of it. Where if you kind of know who you're pitching to, you decide they'll go for the caricature. I'm not chuffed about it, but they'll go for it, and so you end up pitching that type of thing. So because that is a likelihood, because that has existed in wrestling for so long. Of course, when Kofi broke in, it was even worse than, because today's been a lot of pushing forwards to make a very long conversation as short as possible. There's been a movement forwards, and Kofi no longer speaks with a Jamaican accent. He never.
And for the record, just for those listening who don't know, Kofi was Kofi Kingston, a Jamaican dude before WWE. He did that at Chaotic.
Correct. Yeah.
And got signed because of that.
Yeah. So he was doing something that he thought that people in certain places would appreciate. Yeah. And to be fair, Drew McIntyre, that's a very put-on Scottish accent. I would just say, if you were to show that clip to a normal Scottish person that's never seen him speak before, they'd probably have a very good laugh because it's so over the top. That's it. It was D-Mac in the chat saying it was not a good accent by Kofi. This reminded me of the Drew McIntyre thing. I think there are videos of Scottish people reacting to Drew McIntyre's accent. It is quite funny. Anyway, but you know who you are pitching to. And that's why it makes it a bit more difficult when I hear, they came up with that. It's like, but yeah, the world you created that in makes it not black and white in terms of, that means it's 100% fine because they came up with it, therefore they love it. If there's a difference between doing a caricature, the Kofi thing, and what we've seen with Nikki Ash or ASH, where watching I've forgotten Killian Dane's normal name, but Killian Dane, the Big Damo,
Big Damo,
yeah, Big Damo, yeah. Watching him talk about his wife, is like, you can tell that he's really happy for her, as in genuinely she loves doing this. For me, and the quality of the thing in this specific, what we're talking about doesn't really matter. There's a massive difference between that and Kofi decided to put it on an accent. Which world any of these gimmicks fall into, we don't know. We've just got, so far with a lot of it's just initial impressions. There's not really a lot to go on. It was just that on this week's NXT, it was one after the other, stereotype after stereotype, and I'm just like,
Well, so that question I asked you may not be as relevant. Well, I think it's still relevant for Saray because she was gone for a while and then all of a sudden comes back as a schoolgirl, right? But I think it's more pertinent if you're ready to move on to the Walter situation.
Let's do it. Let's stride.
And the reason I say that is because now we all love Walter. He's a fantastic wrestler, one of the best in the world. Does wrestle a bad match. Big meaty man slapping meat type hoss, right? We get all this, right?
Yeah.
But now Walter is Austrian. I'm a black dude from Texas, so I can't speak on the history of Austria, Hungary, Germany, Europe in general. But,
European strides in a minute.
well, but Ring Kampf, the only reason that the word Kampf is known, to my knowledge, in the normal lexicon is because of Mein Kampf, which was the book Hitler wrote that kind of led to him getting control of Germany. And then Ring Kampf was the group he had in the Indies that Imperium is an offshoot of. Ring Kampf was also, the main people was an Austrian dude, a German dude, Marcel Bartel, Alex Dieter Jr., and Tim Thatcher, a white American dude, right? They believe in the purity of the ring and the purity of the sport. They walk very military style. Walter's nickname is the Ring General, the Ring General, right? The mat is sacred, and Imperium is an offshoot of that. And they come out to Dvorsky or whatever his name is, but the classical music, right?
Yeah.
So Walter's been making his career off of like being Nazi adjacent for a decade, and now they actually picked. Now I don't know who picked the name. I don't have a problem with Gunther as a name in general. The fact that someone picked Gunther Stark, didn't Google it, and then actually trademarked it is the most egregious shit in the world to me. Gunther is a name. I know Gunther from Friends, right? He's the coffee barista in Friends. So I'm not offended by that. I'm not offended by the name change, although that's a conversation we could have if you want, because I get why people are mad at that too. Gunther Stark is ridiculous. Who let that go and missed that? That's ridiculous. But the reason I bring all that up to put it in the circle is, what if it was Walter's name that he chose? And then they were like, all right, well, that's what you want, cool. Go ahead and trademark it real fast because it's easier to trademark for them. I'm sure it's nothing for them to trademark something and never use it again. And then they got some backlash, looked it up, and they're like, oh shit, we can't use this. We can still use Gunther, but the Gunther Stark got to go. And then they used Gunther because there has never been any. The only reason we know Gunther Stark is because some journalist or some person looked it up and saw the trademark by WWE and figured it out. And then what WWE has never come out with the last name Stark. They've never announced it. They've never used it. All we know is that they trademarked it and then they dropped the trademark after he announced he was Gunther. So the fact that they even let it be trademarked, somebody needs to be reprimanded for sure. But my question is, people were so in arms about that, rightfully fucking so. But if that was all Walter, should we be mad at the company? Yes, I'm sorry. Let me fix that.
Yeah.
Should be mad at the company.
Yeah.
But should our anger be directed mainly at the company, or should it be directed at Walter, who has secretly and quietly made a living off of this shit for all these years? Look at the way Bartel and Eichner walk across the ring. They're like 2 inches from goose stepping, dog. What are we doing?
So this is where it's really interesting seeing a different culture's interpretation of this.
Okay.
So because there are just facts jumping it at me. I was like, oh, this is really interesting that he's taking it like that. That's quite cool. There's so many points. Right, first off,
sorry about that, by the way, man. That was stream of consciousness coming out.
I was gonna say, I was trying to keep track of everything. I was like, this should be interesting when I come back. I can do this. All right, first off, Kampf is just a word in German. It means battle.
Right.
So.
Right.
And it is all about, and apparently their gimmick is very German, which obviously, because the group we're talking about were German, there's going to be associations. There's going to be just links that just exist. And it's just a very German gimmick, born out of a German promotion, which is the other thing. I feel like I have to try and remind myself. It became popular in Germany in a German promotion, and a lot of their ethics are German essentially. Just that and
WXW, right?
yeah, WXW, amazing promotion, highly recommend them. But part of part of the example that somebody brought up was anybody who's had to file paperwork in Germany knows that essentially their gimmick of like the ring is sacred translates to German culture. Like this is not just I guess one example could be when Kenny was talking about Tetsuya Naito. I was just saying about the whole tranquillo escenario kind of the attitude to life is a very Japanese message. They don't just calm down, just tranquillo, just don't care so much, just calm down. It's so such a strong message to the Japanese culture that it does not translate back to America. We can think it's cool, we can be like, yeah, that's nice, I think, but the message doesn't hit home because we're not in the Japanese culture that the message is aimed at. Whilst this one's more, the reason I brought that relation is it's a very German thing with lots of German kind of ethics things in there, which is why I was finding it so interesting. Just to go like, the things is like, it is, which is why it took off in Germany, which is the thing I have to keep reminding myself in terms of like little changes that happened over the years. The main thing was this was not a gimmick born for Western audiences. They did not design this for English-speaking people. It wasn't for us. They came to the UK eventually because obviously the European ties, but it was for a German promotion in Germany. That's who they were wrestling for. That's where that stable was born. So when it then came over to the UK, they were doing the exact same gimmick. They didn't really change it really. The hardcore British fans, because when they turned up in Progress, it was the first time I saw Walter and Bartel.
Right. That's where I know Walter from too. Yeah.
Yeah. I will just say that when they brought over Keith Lee as well, it's like, the fact that in WWE we didn't get Keith Lee Walter.
Oh, good point. I didn't think about that. It's a great point.
They had so many meaty men that could slap meat, man. So many. Oh my! Because they did Walter Keith Lee on the, I think it was in PWG, because I think it was like 2018 where I was seeing comments online of, you watch your flippy indies, I'll stick with WWE, which is real wrestling. This is real wrestling. You can watch your flippy indie crap, and I'm like, I'm watching Keith Lee Walter. What are you talking about?
That's not too flippy.
It's just two big lads chopping each other on the tits. Like, this is not. This is the opposite of flippy shit, and it's amazing. I love it. It's incredible. But yeah, so it's a massive thing of German culture, essentially. Just the stickler for, but the rules, but kind of elevating it to a tad. So, elevating it a bit, lifting it up. Like you do in wrestling, where you turn it up to 100. Just that kind of part of the culture, just doing that. And they essentially just did the same gimmick wherever they went. And I think what kind of helped them a bit was, in NXT they became, because Fabian Eichner was not part of the gimmick, it was I saw Timothy Thatcher with them more than I saw Fabian Eichner.
Yeah, that's a WWE thing. I don't think he was with them. I don't think he was with Ring Camp.
It's because they wanted to make it European, and so Eichner came in and was perfect. It's kind of like the thing here. Me swapping Eichner for Thatcher is not a critique, because Eichner is so good in the role. He's perfect. It works. It turns the gimmick from I can't remember what Bartel is. I think they might be both Austrian.
No, Bartel is straight German.
He's straight German.
German as German can be. Yeah.
But yeah. So, but by adding an Italian, suddenly it can be European stable, purely European, and you've got 3 different European countries in the stable, and it just works. Obviously, Alexander Wolf, a 4th person, it just worked. Not to quote Todd Howard too much, but it just works with Fabian Eichner. And for me, that kind of helps pull it further away, just pull that gimmick further away from straight German relation. But yes, you got the whole Walter thing, but there are multiple nationalities within there, and they pushed that in NXT. They was talking, their whole European identity was massive. They got them doing more and more European uppercuts, just as a minor thing. Like their finisher was the powerbomb European uppercut thing, which is amazing. Yeah. I love it. It's great. But that's why it's really interesting that we go over to America. And of course, the other thing with Walter was he did not want to go to America for so long. Yes. It took some convincing. He wanted to stay with his family, and he didn't even want to move to the UK. Like, he said, no, I want to stay with my family. And he has wrestling schools. He teaches a lot of people. Apparently really, really enjoys passing on that knowledge. And the fact that you then come over to America and within record time, we don't want to call you Walter. For me, the only reason changing the Walter name is like an issue in their world is because in their world they've established Walter as a person. And I don't just mean in NXT UK. For me, if somebody's in NXT UK, I'm perfectly fine if you change that once you come to NXT or the main roster or whatever. Few enough people watch NXT UK or care about anything that happens over there, you can change things. It's fine. I'm not going to throw a hissy fit over that. But he has been featured on the main TV. Suddenly that's a problem. You have featured this guy. It's not the biggest problem in the world. We were going to get to the biggest
It's
problem.
An annoyance, yeah. It's an annoyance, yeah.
Where you've got this established guy who's had, I think, was he in the Royal Rumble last year?
No, he's never been in a Rumble.
I made that up then. It's just a dream that I've had. Walter entering 30 and chopping everybody.
It'd be perfect if he was in the Rumble, yes.
He's a perfect...
I think he's in the Rumble this year.
Yeah, because for me, he's the perfect number 30. He's a big guy. He can chop everybody and destroy him and then just get chucked out. Like,
I don't know, because number 30 is normally gets the biggest pop. So it's somebody that everybody knows. And as much as I love Walter or Gunther or whatever the hell you want to call him, does everybody know him enough to be like, oh?
Not in a baseball stadium. Like, if you're doing like a more, I'll say, smart crowd, if you're in front of them in like a smaller, tighter arena, you can 100% do that. But in fact, not in a baseball arena with a wide array.
I still believe to this day that AJ Styles' pop, he would have gotten a good pop wherever he was. But the reason it was deafening was because it was in Orlando. And because like everybody in Orlando knew AJ.
Yes.
If that was in like Seattle or like in
Tacoma,
I don't know. Tacoma, Seattle, Tacoma, yeah. You know what I'm saying? In Phoenix or something, it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, I think I'm thinking of like, in my imaginary booking world, I just want to see a big man enter at 30 and chop everyone to hell. I want to see it.
Yes, sign me up. Sign me up. Please.
Maybe not this year. Like, establish the guy first. He could be the new, because the number of times where number 30 hits, he's just like, oh, it's bloody Big Show again. I got all excited. It's like, Walter can be the new Big Show. I can't wait to be disappointed by, it's Gunther again. For now I'm excited. But yeah, so for me, in terms of changing the name, it's just because he has been featured on main TV called something else. I will get over that. That's the type of thing with WWE where we have complained and kicked up about name changes before. I'll get over the name. I'll be fine. It'll take a little while. I may continue to call it a little bit silly. Honestly, I've never really got on over Seth Rollins, but I get used to it. It's fine. I found it a bit.
We had a good conversation about Doudrop.
Oh yeah, Doudrop. Doudrop's an amazing one. Where like on the WWE BT Sport Twitter account, they were like really seriously, Becky Lynch is from Ireland and Doudrop from Scotland. The respect for these two women is amazing. I was like, she's called Doudrop, guys. Like, you know what that word means, right? And it's the gimmick that has never worked for me. The Shorty G idea of someone's giving you a bullying name and you get to own this, I will accept the name. No, you just drop the name whenever they stop calling you it. Because if it's a nickname you don't like, you don't then adopt the... As in, it's something that doesn't click for me. And for some reason, it can click with like marketing stuff, but it doesn't click in terms of the actual story they're trying to tell. Because whilst they're being called that name, they have them on television actively not liking it.
It's so funny to me. The way we look at things so differently.
That's what I was like with the income thing. It's so interesting, yeah.
Well, and so I know I cut you off. Please forgive me, but it's just funny to me because like you mentioned that the fact that it's three different Europeans from different countries, it takes away from it. It adds more to it for me because the Axis powers were Austria, Hungary, Germany, Italy. So in my mind, I'm thinking World War II all over again. And to flip it, the Shorty G thing, which was stupid as hell, but I understand the idea of using a word that somebody used to hurt you against you and using it and taking the power away from it. I'm a black dude, the N-word.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I'm not, that's another conversation for another day that we don't have enough nuance.
I'm going to bring a notepad to our shows just to remember.
But no, it's just cool to see that a black dude from Texas and a dude over from England. It's cool to see the way we look at things so differently. Because I wasn't offended by Shorty G, although I thought it was stupid. But I get the idea of a person saying, I'm gonna make the worst thing you think of me, I'm gonna make it the best thing about me. But yeah, so please continue.
Because I think I definitely dislike Doudrop more than Shorty G. I think that for me, the more offense with the Shorty G thing was it was stupid. So it's more like your storytelling is offending me more than the idea that's there. As in the method you've done it.
What does Doudrop mean again? I think you told me, but I forgot. Why is it so offensive? Or is that something? Okay.
I don't know if I can.
Tell me off air. Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's just like an insult term that you hear a lot.
Okay.
Like dingleberry. Like it's a thing you hear a lot, but once it's described, it's like it's like, oh, this is a flat out insult. This is the main point. And for them to embrace the flat out insult, I was, oh, this is my name. I like the name. I'll cope with it. It's flat out insult. I don't
understood.
Yeah. Also, if it's just because it's such, I mean, in terms of the presentation of the person, it's the music paired with the outfit and the makeup paired with because the outfit and the makeup fit the entrance. But I'm never going to take that character seriously. So the marketing for the match that I've seen to be like this epic, awesome match, and I'm like, well, no, it's the serious wrestler in Becky Lynch, and then it's Doudrop, who everything about her presentation is silly, but now the way you've got her wrestling, talking, delivering her promos, the way she's going after people, is the antithesis of that. But everything else about her in terms of when I say a presentation, I do also mean the look they've got her in and her entrance, music, everything. That's still on the silly side, but everything else is serious. So it's the I want to say Baron Corbin before they gave him the new happy music type of thing. It's if they'd done if they'd done that gimmick for Baron Corbin but kept his same music, and he kept it in the same outfits. It's like no, but you're changing character now. It doesn't fit. You can't be super serious badass destroyer when you're called Doudrop coming out to that music and that Titantron. Like, I'm sorry.
Got you.
If you change, you've got to change everything essentially to make it fit. And I've not done that, so it's kind of clashing a bit. All right, Gunter. Final bit of Gunter. We've still got AEW to get to. I feel like AEW might be quicker. I mean, we haven't got to the creative side. We've tickled it a bit. But the thing with Gunter is when you file a trademark, you have to Google it to see if there won't be a clash. Like when I chose my name, The Implications, whatever, for the YouTube thing, first thing I did was Google the name to see if it was being used, to see if the Twitter account had been created, to see if the YouTube had been created, the Twitch, everything, just to see if what I was using was already in use. And I'm just a random person. If you are going to trademark something, that will be one of the first things you do. We'll check, is this name in use for something? So for me, it's not a question of, oh, did they just not Google it? Did they just not know? No, they had to know. Or at least the people filing the trademark for WWE, I don't know if they use outside people or their own, I'd assume maybe their own. But whoever did that had to know. And a conscious decision was made. Either they told the people down in NXT in this event, let's go ahead and get the trademark anyway. No one will really notice. We might not even use it. Or they kept. I mean, we're creating a world where I don't know what the chain of command is like in WWE. But my main point is, all I know is they had to know. There is no world where the people filing the trademark do not know what that name is. They don't. The reason that the dirt sheets found out was because for a short period before the reports came out, if you were to Google the name, it was the first result. As in, it wasn't down the list, it wasn't on the next page, you did not have to dig for it. It was right there. Which is why the critique of, but he wasn't that bad of a Nazi. I was like, well, that's so wide of the point. This is insane. As in, he was bad enough to be the first search result. Do you know how many there were? Like, there were so many that if you were to Google any random Joe blogs, they would not come up because there were so many. But for this guy, he came up, which means there was something there. So, but my main thing is there is no world where somebody either in WWE or associated WWE with a relationship or whatever did not see it. They saw it. That's not up for. There's no way they didn't. Either that,
Yeah,
or you got
agreed.
people trademarking things without searching stuff up whether to see if they're already trademarked. That's dangerous as a business.
Well,
So,
I agree. Somebody has to know, but let's be real. With what we've learned about WWE and we know about them, would you be surprised if they didn't know? If they just didn't give a fuck.
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't care. As in, they knew, but they were like, sorry,
But also,
fine.
but also, would you be surprised at the ineptitude of some of these people saying, "I just trademark. It doesn't matter." Well,
Oh yeah, that would
you don't have
exist.
to look
Yeah,
it up.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either or, and neither, both of them. I don't even know which one is worse. Which one is being inept or ignorant? I don't know which one is worse.
Yeah, I was
because
gonna
they're
say.
both.
And we can't tell which one it is. It's just, but neither world's good. And I'm not going to give credit for dropping half of the Nazi name. like, come on.
Yeah,
But,
give you credit for not making a bad decision you were already making
Yeah.
or already made, but nobody knows. Yeah,
And the other thing is, WWE have done this before. Like the Japanese wrestler, I've forgotten his name, but they were going to name him after a Japanese war general. And
oh, really? Did that happen?
yeah, I think the guy. All I remember him from my Tanahashi research because he tagged Tanahashi as a young lion in New Japan before going to WWE in 2003 or 4. I want to say, is it like Kenzo Suzuki, Sasaki?
Kenzo Suzuki. Yeah, he was
that's the guy.
tag team with Rene Dupree. Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to give
Yeah.
him. They wanted to give him a gimmick where he was the descendant of a Japanese war general, out to get revenge for the crimes of the war in the past.
Wow.
As in, that's why when WWE trademark something like this, and you brought up the question of would I be surprised? No, there's precedent. Brock Lesnar's pitched original gimmick. Obviously, it's not the same people pitching these things, aside from a few names that still exist. His original pitched gimmick was to be an unfrozen Nazi, which is like
That's right. I forgot about that.
like that is and look at him now. Like he's the best cowboy on WWE TV. Like he's amazing. I love him. He was so good. I did not enjoy this week's Raw. I absolutely loved Brock Lesnar. He was brilliant. But yeah, so there's precedent within the company to be like, no. And obviously, like the social climate was very, very different in the 2000s, where there was that edge humor, where the point of it was to offend. Which for me, that's like the James Gunn conversation. It's like, well, we're not going to pretend that this didn't exist.
Yeah.
That world did exist, but it doesn't mean that they would do this now, which is the Gunter thing. It's like, there was precedent from an era where that thing existed, and it got shot down then for being a bad idea. It's the other thing.
Yep.
To push ahead with it now, but tempered, there was the finding out or whatever. But to go with half of the name is still... Why do you have to change the name in the first place? My only thought is he is main roster bound, and they just wanted a name to be able to copyright
That's all
for
it
the
was.
merchandise. And you know what? I'll get used to it. That's fine. I as a wrestling fan may be like, but he had a great name, and this one's just a little bit silly. And you relate it to being it's a more German sounding name. To which I'm like, if it's not German, it's the Rusev thing. Where the Rusev thing, genuinely, I laughed at it, thought it was stupid. I could never take Russian Rusev seriously as good as he was in the role, because I knew he wasn't Russian. That's the end of it. Gimmick dead. I know he's not Russian. And Bulgaria and Russia are not the same place. There's a lot of history.
And that's the beauty of being in America, because us ignorant Americans were like, well, they're close enough together. He's a Russian sympathizer. It works for me. They're close in proximity. And I consider myself a history buff. I don't know shit about Bulgaria and Russia. I ain't know.
And but yeah, for me that was like that's that. It's somewhat, if they're trying to make in German is the other thing. Of course, it's been 1 week. Like the next episode is like started airing like 30 minutes ago. Like we don't know where they're going to go. We don't know what changes they'll make. We don't know little things. But if he arrives on the main roster helming a German flag, I'm going to immediately turn off. I don't mean turn off the product. I don't mean cancel the network. I mean mentally, I'm just going to be like, oh, okay, he's playing a German character because, okay. It means that the show feels dumber because it's telling me certain things in a certain way. And as a viewer, when I say you feel insulted, what I mean is you feel like what you're watching is dumb. And that's the worst thing to feel, especially when you're watching something that's already a little bit silly. It's the world of professional wrestling. It's a crazy world.
That's very fair. That's very fair.
Yeah, so that might be everything I have on Gunter. I'll get used to the idea of a name change for me isn't the worst thing in the world. I'll get used to it. It's fine. I may have that's a bit silly. Why do you didn't even have to? You had a great name, but I understand why it's business, but it's pure business. But also, it's the name. The reason you chose that name is the next question, because all we know is they chose. The problem. Yeah, why did you choose that name? Yeah, massive exclamation marks, questions like what's going on here? Right. Oh, that felt hearty getting all that through all that. Oh man, I might have to turn this podcast just into a series because there's so much to kind of just jump into. Because I'm kind of like, when on earth are we going to get to the storyline stuff and the creative side?
Man, right? We might have to run through that like some quick hits at the end because look. You said like you said we haven't started AEW yet. Yeah.
And I feel like now's like the time. I feel like I'm done with WWE for now. We've talked about all the stuff that isn't really storyline production related, because I want to tie those together, like the production side, the storyline side, which is kind of like I could turn this into a running series. Just get Rance on once a month, just to crap on everything, or delight about everything. It makes a nice change of pace.
Get it out of our system.
Yeah. So. AEW, we can do it. Yeah, I feel it's like natural twitch to AEW. So, in terms, we talked about their contracts at the start as we're talking about WWE. Immediately, because again, we're crapping on everything. Want to hear good things about AEW? Listen to our show last week. It was wonderful. It was lovely. It was a delightful time, man. Delightful.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, not today though. No. Get that smile off your face. Not today. No. So with AEW. In terms of contract not being renewed, there are obviously multiple different reasons why that could happen. And obviously, as you grow as a business, there is... Because I feel like with the way that AEW books, their ethos is we rotate, people get rests. We don't feature the same people every single week. That seems to have shifted a little bit to like, if you're a main like top guy, you will feature every week in some capacity. This week, there was no Young Bucks, but there was the essence of the Young Bucks with Brandon Cutler. I think for best friends. Like I'm talking about Dan Knight specifically because obviously later we got Nick Jackson in an amazing match. But my point being that they said before even an episode aired that their idea was to have a load of talent and you rotate the talent, give them time off, time to recover, a much lighter schedule, much kind of like nicer on the body, looking after their performers. Like one of the things they were saying was quite high up the list. But also, their roster is growing. It's huge. And as we were saying earlier, the massive named WWE releases, their time is coming up. As in, they will be ready to sign soon. And there are some names that you do not pass on. As in, there are some names that I feel like it's almost a guarantee will show up somewhere. In terms of one of the, I'll say 3 big names outside of WWE. I'm talking New Japan, Impact, or AEW. The names will show up in those promotions, almost guaranteed. And AEW already has a massive roster. There's already people fighting for time to get on that show. There's all like the critiques of, is it better to have more women's matches or one longer one? The conversation is happening because AEW is already fighting for time, and there's the push of, if they've got a certain amount of time and a lot of things, they can feature more than one. It is a choice not to, but they decide to give something more time, and that's part of the debate with it, because obviously that means we've only got one segment, which it's like
2 hours.
Yeah, and they'll keep coming up. Obviously, when I'm watching it, I prefer watching a match play out rather than combine. I get more matches, but they combine to like 3-4 minutes, like the Queen of the Ring, where. Sure. The combined time was I remember for the week of Raw and SmackDown, the combined time was shorter than the Roman Reigns entrance, and that was across Raw and SmackDown for that week. Which means that I think it was like 3 or 4 matches as well, shorter than the Roman Reigns entrance. It was pretty bad. Yeah. So do I want the number of matches, or do I want one longer one? Obviously, I want more than one, more than one, and they are longer. It's the dream world. My point I'm getting to is it's such a stacked roster in AEW, and there's so many people. Obviously, for me, it just kind of jumps up. Well, you're going to bring on more people. There is a limit, and eventually, people just aren't going to get featured. And it seems to be what Tony Khan kind of said. If you fall into that category of not being featured, we won't cut you, but we are likely to let your contract run out. And I think one because of course what example that Rance brought up earlier, where a load of AEW talent worked at GCW show, COVID outbreak, holy crap, suddenly we might not be able to use these people because I think David Bixman brought up the specifics in the AEW contract, and part of it was as long as it doesn't hinder you performing for AEW, then it's fine. Suddenly that COVID thing happened, and a bit stricter, way stricter. But I know like Brian Cage has been allowed to work a lot more dates outside of AEW. There are people, not everybody has been as loose to go to certain places. But I know for somebody, so that screams to me, if we decide we're probably not going to renew your contract, probably not going to use you in the future, we're not going to cancel your contract, you'll still get paid by us, and we'll let you start getting bookings elsewhere at a much higher rate. The only example I've got right now is Brian Cage, purely because he's the only one of the roster that I looked into. It's as simple as that. He's the guy I looked into, so I know he's getting a lot of bookings in different places doing different things. It's just, obviously, that limit becomes a problem over time, and as these new names come in, naturally more people will fall into that category in terms of, well, I'm just not using you. And in terms of that being an idea, it could be a thing. I realise I'm not really talking about a negative here. I'm just kind of describing a situation. Because,
you can take negatives from it, sure. I mean, it's not an overt negative like what WWE does, but it's there. You can take negative connotations from it, sure.
Yeah.
Brian Cage is one person picks and chooses who wins, who loses, who wrestles, who doesn't. Yeah. And he's choosing not to use certain people.
Yeah, which obviously to that person, that can build up that. I think the word looks for is like angst, anxiety. Am I doing something wrong type of situation for them when we got this amazing contract?
Brian Cage is a perfect example. Brian Cage was brought in as the Joker in the Casino Battle Royal, was expected to be a major star there. They put him with Taz. I mean, Team Taz works, but he never really fit with Team Taz. It didn't really kind of go the way maybe things wanted to go. They had the big feud with him and Starks where forgive me, have they even had the blow-off match? And then he disappears.
Kind of. It's the best way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he disappears. And that's been for almost a year now. And so it's like Tony could have used him. Just shows that to the point where Melissa Santos had to come out and talk about it and say he wants to be used. They don't want to use him. So, Joey Janela's another guy. Janela is one of the most booked indie wrestlers in the world. Man, has he wrestled 10 matches in AEW this year? Not this year. Well, 2021?
Depends if you count Dark. You're doing a lot of work with younger guys.
That's another conversation, bro.
All I know is Janela very recently said he's very, very happy in terms of like the progress he's making in AEW and out of AEW. He wants to stay. And when he says in AEW, part of that is him getting into much better shape and being in a much better life position with AEW.
Oh, yeah. The AEW paycheck is different than working them paychecks check to check for show to show. Yeah, I wouldn't leave it either.
I meant more in the kind of fitness and mental health state. Like he's got into a really good place.
Too.
Yeah.
But again, this is a dude who, before he got signed to AEW, when he broke his torn ACL or whatever, was still living at his mom's house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now you making 6 figures, probably mid.
Yeah, that jump. Yeah.
And they allow you to do whatever you want everywhere else. Like he basically is like the second to Brett Lauderdale, books whatever he wants. Yeah, I'd want to stay with AEW too if I'm not wrestling or not.
Yeah. And because I know like a lot of his stuff has been on AEW Dark, like doing a lot of work with Sonny Kiss, kind of helping her get that kind of character side worked out. There's
Yeah.
a woman who's paired with him, whose name I've forgotten. Um, oh,
Kayla Rossi, is it?
oh,
Is that Kayla?
that feels really close. That must be right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know he's helping others in on AEW Dark. I know he's himself saying he's really happy, kind of with his kind of both life improvement and kind of where he is in AEW. He wants to stay with AEW. He wants to resign. It looks like he will be offered a renewal. Just obviously, I don't know
Okay.
in what capacity, because I don't know what he was brought on for. I don't know what contract they initially offered him. I don't know if he was meant to be, if like Tony knew he was going to be kind of double duty between AEW and GCW in terms of the amount of stuff he was doing. I don't know. I don't know anything. All I know
All I
is
know is he was at the initial press conference, so he clearly was important
yes.
enough for them
Oh
to be
yeah.
one of the first people they signed.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And the fact that he's allowed to be so featured in GCW stuff still is that says a lot.
Yep.
Obviously, in terms of releases and renewals or whatever, in terms of AW, the one which 100% should have been handled differently is Big Swole. And for me, it bleeds. Yeah, you've been waiting. We've been. It's one of those. This one has been bubbling under the surface, and then we had to put it to the side. We went deeper into WWE, so now we're finally here. So for me, the Leo Rush story bleeds into this one.
Yep.
Where with Leo
Directly
Rush,
affected.
yeah, like with Leo Rush, it's like that sucks that like this conversation led to Rush being like, you know what, no, which, and again, it's the thing of that discussion happened, and obviously it can't have gone perfectly because Leo Rush has gone, yeah. Whatever Tony Khan said in that discussion did not convince Leo Rush to stay signed on. But yeah, so with Big Swole, the having a conversation with Swole, and then her putting out, well, I respect all of this and that, and we had this discussion, and we agreed and disagreed on these things, and these were the critiques. Is what I'd like to see improved. That, for me, like that's the best way to offer critique. There was nothing malicious in that whatsoever. Like I don't know what else she could have done. Like it's the absolute perfect way. For me, I'm envious in how well she delivered that. It was done so well.
Multiple times. Multiple
Yeah.
times.
But then Tony Khan's response is just that reminder of, yes, these are billionaire people in very different worlds, and it is a running theme that taking criticism can be very, very difficult for that kind of person. And it's just a reminder, yeah, did not take criticism well at all. And it was good. It was the best form of criticism in terms of the way it was delivered. Obviously, not the subject matter, but the way it was delivered was the best form you can have. And it kind of just led to, but we do this and we do that. Oh, you must be wrong because this happens. It's like, what? He couldn't have done it because he's nice to me. No, that's not this at all. It's to just push it aside as, we do all this, therefore it's fine. Well, no, because they were genuine critiques and she had points. She was right. And to brush that all aside by... It was like, it was going to... All of your words, they were all just insults. They were you're lashing out at us. We're just going to push that aside. But no. And the fan reaction has been... You can see, like, in my voice, I definitely lean more AEW in terms of what I prefer in terms of product.
Sure.
And immediately I'm just like, yeah, no, this has been mishandled. 100%. Like, and this is not the first time this has happened where Tony Khan just hasn't reacted to a criticism that well on social media. My number one kind of recommendation is probably just don't be on social media as much, especially if he's in such a... When I mean as much, I mean in such a reactionary role like you're a normal everybody, in a way.
Higher public relations.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. Especially as the company is growing, getting more and more eyes on it, you need that. If they do have that department, it needs to be bigger. Just because as a growing company, there'll be more and more eyes, and suddenly switching from what Tony Khan is, which is essentially, like us, internet wrestling nerd. Switching from that to all eyes on you, your words are kind of representative of this company you have created. You can't lash out like you used to, and or
Well,
just
he should.
respond. Yeah.
The person over a wrestling company should never lash out to people in general. But
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, people may feel differently about that. But PR would fall under
Oh,
the
all
chief
of this.
brand
Yeah.
officer, the chief
Mm.
brand officer, who is probably the second most egregious person in this regard, Brandy Rhodes. So like they're screwed either way it goes, you know. So,
Mm.
but no, keep going because yes, this conversation here, bro. My God.
Yeah. For me, it's just the way it was conducted in terms of brushing aside genuine critique, as if no, doesn't matter. Yeah, leave it. No, yeah, you were insulting us essentially. You weren't. This is you are lashing out after being released. Like no, she wasn't. This was genuine critique, words to really listen to, and very hopeful messages as well. Like we could strive for these things if these things happen. For the conversation we had, I didn't feel like that was going to happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Leo Rush conversation went very similarly. And then it seems like, obviously, from Swole's perspective, it's like a polite agree to disagree. It's fine. Like he's not going to renew the contract, and she's like, you know what, fine, it's all right. But then for him to react like that, and with I just didn't think you were a very good wrestler. That is ridiculous, especially as the head of the promotion. Like that's insane. Just that is, if you generally feel that way, and if you generally type that out on, just read your tweet to yourself and just delete anything personal. Really, just anything where you're like, I thought, just gone, get rid of it. It's purely because of the role that he's in, and it's for me, it's a little sign that there does need to be a much bigger kind of PR working with those in AEW. And again, as we're saying, Brandy Rhodes at the top. This needs to be taken genuinely seriously because it's more than once this has become a problem, and now with more. And this has become in terms of. I was trying to pinpoint a word for the topics that Swole was talking about, but my mind just can't find the word. But what she was talking about, for that to essentially get pushed aside to become, Tony Khan, as in the focus switches to Tony Khan and this bad thing that he said, rather than the thing Swole was saying, which deserved to be heard out. For me, that's a massive shame.
So, my God, there's the two biggest things most fans would say that AEW's had issues with, besides production, because they've had some production issues and whatnot, and that happens, they're new, but is representation, especially for people of color, and their women, right?
Yeah.
And now you got to give all the blame to Tony because he owns the company, he books the company. He, to his own words, has said that I take stuff away from people, I just put it more on my plate because I trust myself to do it. So, like, instead of delegating and hiring the right people to put in these positions to do these things, you just take it all. Like when the Max Caster thing happened and he made those crazy lines. The guy who was over Dark, he took the power away from him and said, "I'll just do it now." Instead of saying, "No, let's get somebody in power and let's do it right." So all these things play a part, right? First off, Tony Khan is the best thing that's ever happened to AEW and the worst thing that's ever happened to AEW, in my opinion. I say that, we don't have to explain why he's been the best thing. He's given the wrestling world a level of freedom and this, I don't believe this word, but this is going to sound crazy, hope in a sense.
I know what you're trying to say, yeah.
Yeah, that we haven't seen since 2001, right? For the first time in 20 plus years, with respect to TNA and Impact, and they had their moment, there is viable options in wrestling now. You don't have to just watch WWE if you want to watch mainstream wrestling. That's all because of Tony, and of course the EVPs and whatnot. But Tony, particularly because he owns the company, pays for the company, he books the company. So we know the positives and whatnot. But the negatives are, first and foremost, that he doesn't allow anybody else. I say doesn't. He hasn't seemed to have allowed, according to some of the things he said, for some of the other people who need to or put other people in place to help things be worked on or fixed. These are not his own words. That's the problem because you can't do everything. On top of the fact that if AEW was your only job, you can't do everything. But also, you're the general manager of Fulham FC, and you're like one of the presidents or whatever your high-ranking role is of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So like, you just can't do everything. Number one. Number two, you've shown that you are one of the most thin-skinned human beings I've ever seen in the public eye. Like the smallest hint of something that is not glowingly kissing your ass, you want to go off on. That's a problem. That's a major problem. Like there are so many things, and like so many of the issues AEW has had. If he wasn't the be all end all, we wouldn't be talking about this. The issue with the death match they had, the Onita style match with the barbed wire exploding death match. That issue, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't have if he wasn't the be all end all and the people had to report to him and there was somebody else that they could have went to, somebody could have checked that and said, you know what, this ain't gonna work, let's fix it. But he's the be all end all, bing bang boom, it's not gonna work. Production. If they had a Kevin Dunn, nobody should ever have a Kevin Dunn, but somebody in that role who he trusted, then maybe when Jericho falls off the cage in one of the biggest moments in the company's history, and we see he falls into we see the angle that they give, he falls to a mattress, essentially. We wouldn't see that if somebody was actually doing that wasn't him. So, like, you have to allow your people to do their jobs. And then, booking the divisions, you've done a decently good job of booking. He may not book to my style of liking, but I've admitted I'm a different dude. But I can acknowledge that by and large, what he does, most people enjoy very, very strongly. But that falls into the issue of just outwardly refusing to put more women on your show. Refusing. And the argument of, well, there's not enough women ready to be put in that position. You're a brand new promotion. Make them ready. You can make them ready. That's you. Nyla Rose, who she is now, was not the Nyla Rose in 2018, 2019. But they propped her up there because she's trans and she's gonna get all this publicity and this, that, and the other. Nyla wasn't very good in 2018. She's great now. But go back and watch her stuff back then. But you still put her out there. Big Swole is the last person I remember to cleanly beat Britt Baker. But now she's garbage? You know what I mean? And then the whole representation thing, and then that's another conversation that we can go into more in a minute. But further on to the roster situation, I'm a person that likes to believe what you tell me. If you're going to tell me that you don't want your company to pick everybody up from WWE, and then you go and you pick up so many people from WWE, I'm not saying to pick everybody up. We're not going to play that game. Nuance matters. We're not going to play that game where you think I say everybody, you take me literally. We know what.
I'm not wearing glasses. It's where we just my glasses. Actually, it was 22. I think it is around that number, like 22 or so. But anyway, go on. I can't remember what it is. Yeah.
But it's a major amount of people, and more importantly, the amount of people you're signing, you're putting over the people that could be doing something that you signed from the indies, or you gave opportunities to, or this or that or the other. So that's all you. That's all you. Just like many people think Vince is the worst thing to happen to WWE. Cool, you may be right, but he's also the reason that they got $3 billion deals and wrestlers make more money there than anywhere else. Like the positives and the negatives start at the top. So Tony is the biggest negative of AEW to me first and foremost. And then if you want to get into this whole how you treat a Big Swole and that conversation and the situation about representation and the people, you know the thing that bothered me the most about the whole situation? Two things bothered me the most about that tweet and that whole situation. Number one, he clearly didn't even read the article or listen to the damn podcast, because he was responding to Fightful's um, title of the article. Number one, and number two, what bothered me the most was, and I'll never be the guy to call out other black people or people of color for acquiescing to somebody to save their job, like whatever it is. I get the game, I get it, right? I get the game. But the way so many people jumped to Tony and said, well, man, hey, not me. Hey, everything been good with me. Will Hobbs put out a statement that don't even sound like Will Hobbs. And more pertinently, Captain Sean Dean, who was one of the best dudes on the indies for years and deserves everything he's getting in AEW right now, fantastic wrestler, fantastic dude, came out and went out of his way to stick up for AEW. He is, if you don't know, Sean Dean took over what QT Marshall was doing, in that he books the people for Dark.
Yeah.
Right? So, he's not just a wrestler there. He has a job there. What happened the very next week, Matt? Sean Dean beat MJF.
I was going to say, was that the week they beat MJF? Yeah.
The very next week. So it's come on, man. If don't be that blatant, bro. Don't be in my face with it. At least make me think about it.
Yeah, don't. Oh, the example that came to my head was the Jinder Mahal thing, where it's so see through what you're doing.
Yeah. We know you want to go. We know you want to get to the billion people in India, so you made an Indian world champion. That's cool, but you ain't gotta throw it in my face and not lie to me at least.
Yeah, as in immediately that this next period is you're gonna do it with no build whatsoever. That type of thing.
Yeah, man. It's so insulting, bro.
And because who was it? I know Ricky Starks was on. I think he was interviewed by. I think he said this on when he was interviewed by Wrestle Talk. But one of the things he was talking about was have they insulted the audience at all? And the media was like, well, yeah, obviously we have. And try not to, but we have. It's just I feel in terms for me again, that's good critique. It's just which is one of the main things I keep coming back to from which I feel it's gone under the radar, which is still a massive deal. Is everything Swole said isn't really talked about. Obviously, you want to talk about representation, and Leo Rush obviously had that conversation, but we see all the aftermath of that. He's now gone. Oh, obviously, he's serving out his contract, then going. They're still honouring his contract.
His 6-month contract.
Which is still
right?
that other question mark.
That.
Yeah. Why is Leo Rush, who amazing talent, on a 6-month contract? That one's weird.
And add to this, Matt, you do remember that this is Leo's second time in the company. The first time he was there and he got hurt. And that's when he had the injury that caused him to retire. Yeah. Caused him to retire or whatever, and he came back out. So clearly this is the guy you've wanted for a long time, and you're like, nah, son, 6 months, that's it, bro. What? On top of the fact that he was in this actually really interesting storyline of trying to be the mentor to Dante Martin, and he's pulled again right after he spoke out with the Swole situation. There's put the blinds over my eyes, bro. It's so blatantly out there in the ether for us to see. It's ridiculous. The one person who had the audacity, who works for you, to sit here and say this ain't cool, you need to apologize, and then even they got to Leo, because when they had the quote unquote conversation, first thing Leo came out and said was, well, me and Tony, I'm thankful for what he's done for me, and he's such a good guy, and this and that. I don't give a fuck how good a guy he is. When you say fucked up things, you deserve to get called out for saying fucked up things. It's ridiculous. The ass that this dude needs to, and this is any of these guys, billionaires who run companies, because we can say all this about Vince too. I'm sure it's the same way. But Tony is you never hear from Vince McMahon unless you're on an investor call. Ever. I hear from Tony Khan more than I hear from my damn kids. It's ridiculous.
And I think that is part of the kind of. I don't know if for me if it's an adjustment period to have such a different kind of person at the top. For me, with a big business like this with AEW, for me, the owner being a bit more silent because what we're having in front of us is so representative. Every single person is representative. That's partly why WWE like to filter all of their hustle side gigs for their wrestlers through them. Yes, obviously, like the OnlyFans thing, they get an absolutely massive cut from it. For me, I do not agree with the OnlyFans thing at all, but understand why. Because they wanted, because again, it's the control, it's the funnel thing of you represent our brand, therefore do it through us. Is partly the way to do it, but I don't see that as a super negative. Even though I personally we were like, let's let you wrestlers have the money, but I do understand but please do funnel through us, like the business side of it. That for me makes a lot of sense because you are representing the brand, and therefore it makes sense to kind of like be filtered through the thing whilst you're representing the brand. Obviously,
the money is surely the biggest thing for sure.
Oh,
but
yeah,
also,
100% it is, yeah.
But also, let's imagine if Lana was still with the company, and and they allowed Lana to have OnlyFans, and she was putting news on her OnlyFans, and you're a PG company. It's not a good look.
I mean, obviously there's a sense of control, but like for example, Zelina Vega, she was making so much money
on Twitch,
yeah. On Twitch and OnlyFans, she was making so much money, and then suddenly got it taken away.
That's the one that bothers me. I actually call me a shit whatever you want. I agree with them saying no to the cameos, and I agree with them because that infringes on something that they do as a company. Meet and greets are a big part of their company, what they do and how they make money. It's a big part of their outreach. They have meet and greets at cities and this, that, and the other, or at before shows or this and that. That's a big part of what they do. And the only reason the cameo got hot was because they couldn't in the pandemic, right? So I can understand WWE saying, no, you can't do this because this is part of our company. There is nothing involved with playing video games. And the only reason Twitch became an issue is because AJ Styles gave too much of the business away. Remember that? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I was remembering that it was just so casual and chilling, and then the next few days were anything but that. Which is just, but yeah, I realise that's a tangent. We're meant to be on AEW.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
You
and I are good for that
because it's impossible to talk about that and then not have that be a positive for AEW because they let them do all that stuff. But what we're talking about is whilst you're representative of a company and the way that you present yourself and way things are filtered through because of that, and nobody is more representative than the guy at the top, the be all and end all, which is partly why, like, if you actually had Vince on a platform, I'm not going to say social media because that kind of puts it in an era, but Vince on a platform reacting to comments, reacting to criticism from fans, from whatever, like, that would not make for good hearing. Like, it's almost without question the initial response. And for me, that's the thing that I don't want to see Tony Khan doing personally. Like, I'm perfectly fine if he thinks it to himself. He could even say it to a friend or whatever. But because he is the be-all and end-all at the top, having those reactionary things, and for me that's the other reason why the Big Swole thing is like, I made a joke way earlier on, and I can bring it back now. I can pretend it's a setup. Well, I was talking about my NXT column, and I said the number of people and comments that I got on that column, calling me an idiot and all sorts of different things, reacting off the picture. And which I pointed out, the title underneath it was the full title. It was just the picture that said NXT is dead.
Yep.
And for me, that's what Tony Khan's done. He's Facebook commented it. He's initial thing, immediate reaction, and for me that's a bad look. Like, I wouldn't post that, and that's me. And all I've got to think about is my own personal brand, not a whole company's. And like, yeah, obviously you are going to have reactions to comments, and they may not always be the best reaction. But that's why you don't then post. Like, don't send an email in anger. Don't reply to somebody whilst you're kind of feeling like that. It's, for me, social media, obviously it massively pressures you to respond to everything, have an opinion on everything now. It doesn't matter if you don't have enough information or context. Respond to it and have an opinion right now. That pressure's there. But you can... But the control comes in kind of pushing away and kind of like, no, I don't have to. Which isn't easy, especially if you're in a position receiving a lot of that kind of comment in a way.
You know what's interesting though? don't you have to give us as fans a lot of the blame for that? And I
Oh,
say that because
it's all
we
over.
don't hold, so many of us don't hold him accountable. How many people, after Swole said what she said, and Tony posted what he posted, all were like, but he's right, but he's right though. She is a terrible wrestler. That's the fucking point.
Yeah, I think I'm completely missing the point.
And so it's like
Same with the
I'm
Gunter
big.
thing. The amount of people just, oh, but this is for like, no, that's not the. That's an entirely. It's the tweet that went viral, where it's like,
Yes.
oh, I love sandwiches. Wait, that means you hate waffles? What? No, that's a completely different sentence. What are you talking about?
That's a great analogy. I'm big on accountability. I'm huge on accountability. Right? So if I do something that messes up, right, I guarantee you Greg's not gonna come to me and be like, yo, bro, you can't do that. Same with you over at Wrestling Headlines. I don't know if I can say the dude's name out here, but like he who shall not be named
Yeah.
is gonna give you a call or send you a message and be like, yo, Matt, you can't do that. Accountability is important because you don't always know if something is good or bad before it gets out of Gunther Stark. Had the person said, you know what, man, I think we should do Gunther Stark. That works. How about we Google this first? Had there been that accountability, we wouldn't have this issue. But because there was no accountability, there's an issue there. Tony has no accountability, and the only people that can hold him accountable are the people who buy his product. And by and large, the overwhelming majority of people who buy and are involved and watch his product don't hold him accountable. And that's part of the problem. That's why he hasn't changed since. That's why he's still tweeting nonsense to this day, and that's why he has refused to apologize to Swole. And now one dude is gone because of it. Another dude got a big win that would have never gotten in any other world over a guy because, like, it's all stemming from that one tweet. But if we held him accountable, and I'm not saying we need to get to the point where like run him off of Twitter or make him feel less of a person,
Yeah.
but let him know that's not okay. We as a fan base don't stand by this. Even if I believe that Swole isn't a good wrestler, you shouldn't say that, and you should listen to what she said. Even if that's what we all say collectively, or most of us, cool. He knows, all right, I fucked up here. But he'll never think he fucked up because he has nobody to answer to, and the only people he has to answer to that lines his billionaire pockets. Nobody's sticking up for that and saying anything.
Yeah, it's obviously this is where the conversation where for me the parallels between like this and every other fandom that exists in the world where there's competition.
Yep.
Oh yeah, where I'll go to the gaming one because that was where big news came out this week. There's one in my head where it's Microsoft with Xbox and it's Sony with PlayStation, where it's the massive competition. But when it comes to like big events and things, the owners of both companies will be sitting at a table together having a great laugh. Like the competition is good for the revenue. It's just it's all advertising. It's like both of them, as in terms. The point I'm making is the two companies. They're not that different, really, in terms of a lot of different things. Obviously, I'm not talking about. Well, listen to our positive one from last week. in terms of
there's a history.
Like the product itself, obviously there's differences.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is like it's the whole thing for me. Like brands aren't your friends, type of thing. Like and for me, this also falls into that. Like I am getting a service from them, which I really, really enjoy. Therefore, I'm going to keep returning to them as it is. I mean, the same with WWE. I kept returning to them until I didn't enjoy the service anymore. I don't owe them anything. I don't watch WWE because I should have the privilege to witness them. So bear witness is a privilege, not a right. No, that's not how entertainment works. Like, no, get off your high horse.
They're supposed to earn your viewership. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and 100%, AEW are doing that right now. They are earning my viewership, whilst WWE aren't for me. And obviously, this is the wrong time to say that sentence because I'm massively engaged because it's the Royal Rumble week. Like the one, yeah.
It's Royal Rumble week, and we're talking negatively about AEW. So
Yeah.
great time to put that
Yeah.
out there.
I'm on here to say, but I'm not watching WWE, except for this week when I've said this. I am specifically watching a lot of WWE. I'm on the WWE network almost every day watching Royal Rumbles. It's just the wrong one week for me to say this. But also in the chat, I was gonna do a Scott Hall because he introduced with the yo. So, hey yo, that's my Scott Hall. That'll do. I didn't do enough gravel. I've not smoked enough cigarettes to really do a Scott Hall. I mean, the ultimate having not smoked enough cigarettes to do is Eric Young. Like, my God. At 25, the voice of a 50-year-old just scrolling, hey guys, I'm Eric Young. Like, my God. My God. I really rate that guy as a wrestler. That's like the first comment I think I've ever said on this channel about Eric Young. Anyway, let's get on back. So, it's with the whole thing on my friends. It's like, I'm not going to hoist up who is my favourite billionaire. It's like, no, this guy's offering me a service that I enjoy. I can tell him I enjoy it, and for me, that's why I feel quite easy. Just like, when you F up, I feel perfectly fine just letting you know, because it's to bring it all back. What Swole was doing was trying to help things forward. It was a very hopeful kind of tone in what she was saying, in terms of things aren't there now, but with a few things we can get there. Like the road is there for us to actually drive down it. We just have to make the choice to do it. Was the kind of like the tone I was getting from what she was saying.
Yeah, and she was out. I think most importantly, she was also saying, and she mentioned this by literally. This was only her experience. Other people may feel differently.
Yeah, which doesn't invalidate
just her experience.
Which doesn't invalidate her experience, because obviously that was her experience.
Yeah, and if Sean Dean or Will Hobbs or Nyla or Daniel Bryan Danielson, if they had a different experience, cool. Their experience is just as valid as hers is. Yeah,
hers doesn't invalidate theirs either. Like,
exactly.
Because things aren't black and white. Like, this is, I probably shouldn't say that. So, in terms of representation, it's like, no, this is literally about this.
It's like, it was actually appropriate. Yeah. Yes, that was a well done pun. Yes.
But I didn't mean to make the pun. Massively, when I realised I'd done it, I was like, damn it. But yeah, so with the whole, in terms of like, this issue, it's not a black and white thing where he's done one wrong, therefore every single thing in terms of representation that is to AEW is all bad. Like, no, it's not all bad. That's because that's not how the world works. But there are things that could be better, and that's kind of what Big Swole was trying to say. As in, they are not currently. They could be a lot better. You look at the main event of AEW, they're all white. Like, every single... Obviously, they're not, not all straight Christian white. As in, they're not all... As in, I was going to say, they're not all pictured and put on a thing. Yeah. Which that was a side conversation that got brought up. It was like, he's only doing like the generic like white Christian male type thing. Obviously, look at who he's pushing. That is that's you just have to watch the show to know that's not true. You look at the four pillars. They're not all white. You look at the 4 killers that are coming up. They're not all. As in, there is that, and I really want the official name to become the 4 killers because I liked it so much when I saw that.
That would be cool. Yeah,
amazing, especially because Hook is in it. It makes sense. Like, a category of generation which has got Hook and Will Hobbs in it, you've got to call them the killers. It works so damn well. Yeah,
I'm with it. Yes.
Yeah.
But there's so. But yeah, just it's important to note, and there was a time not too long ago. I'm talking like 2-3 years ago where Adam Page was a mid card guy.
Yeah.
But because the Bucks and BTE took an interest in him, and Tony Khan took an interest in him, They bred him to be the top guy of that company. So don't tell me that there's no black men or any men of color ready to be in that position. It's not true. Don't tell me that. So like, I give them the opportunity, put them in a situation, book the story. Like Hook has wrestled 4 matches in his life, and he's the most over guy in the company because you booked him to be dominant and interesting.
And
it's really simple.
And for me, there are people who are really, really close to. For me, I would pick them to do that. As in, for me, just jumping out is Will Hobbs, and
because been there the whole time.
Yeah, and for me, he is absolutely as in because he got signed as a really promising rookie. Then he got put into Team Taz, and he's seen the improvement in Team Taz. And now, for me, he's reaching that point of he can become an established character, and he can start a thing. Because that's the other thing that I really like with AEW. It's the multi-year thing. And damn it, I said the word like on this show. What's wrong with me? I'm getting to a wider point. It's fine. For me, he's a great example of somebody who is ready for a slow, gradual thing. Because we're not talking do it next week. That's not what we mean. The Adam Page thing was, 3-4 years, if you include before AEW. That was a very slow, gradual burn, and it worked to a T. It's a proof of concept, is Page. Now that you've proved it, apply that elsewhere. And because that is for me, it's a negative that it's not been applied elsewhere, but it's a positive that you've had your proof of concept and it works. That's a massive positive. You just have to decide to apply it elsewhere.
This reminds me of something Paul Heyman once said. Someone asked him one time, how do you someone asked him talking about the old finishers of back in the day, like the DDT, and why they're not finishers anymore. Everybody kicks out of them and anything. And he was like, well, you can make anything a finisher. He was like, you just have to really stick with it and make it important. And he gave this example. He said, if I brought Mark Henry out, the world's strongest man, and he comes out all his bravado and just terrifying, and he puts somebody in a headlock and they flop around and he does all this gesticulations and whatnot, and he passes out and he's gone. And I do that, and I tried him out every week. Week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7, 20 weeks. By the time we get to that 20th week and he beats everybody with that same headlock, people are going to know that headlock is a dangerous finisher, because it's not about what can it do, it's about what can you make it do and how do you make it look. It's the same thing with wrestlers. If you said right now, today, we're recording this on January 25th, if you said right now, I'm going to make Lee Moriarty the world champion by June, it's possible. You just got to literally put it into motion. And the fact that the person who books the show, owns the show, runs the show, plans the show, does everything for the show but wrestle on the show, is not doing that is indicative of what he really cares about. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. And the 4 pillars, you said, are all white. The four, well, not, I know Guevara is Hispanic, but he's a very, very passable Hispanic person. And I know that's, again, more nuanced, not trying to ignore or lessen his Latino heritage. I'm not. But, you know what I'm trying to say. Some people know, if you don't hit me up at HRA Cash, I'll have an actual real conversation with you about it. But, like, so many of the people in that situation are people who are or can pass for the majority of this world. So it's like, it's a choice, dog. It's a choice.
And I feel like when in terms of, I'm going to have to accidentally bring up a positive because of, in terms of recent thing that has been a slow built to. And I saw somebody use it as the very next week this happens. It's like, are you telling me you think that Jade Cargill was a sudden random decision out of nowhere?
No, that's the one they chose. That was planned. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're again in terms of proof of concept, and because we're in the early stage of AEW, for me, this is a great proof of concept of building up a young talent. And except she's younger than me, and I'm still in my 20s. she is young. But obviously we're not talking killers young. But still, built up over the course of AEW's run, and slowly improved and given her the opportunities to improve and made her feel dominant without featuring her a lot until like the months before this tournament, slowly featuring her more and more. Then Rampage gave them more time, which massively helped. But of course, Dynamite is the A show. Until you're featuring Jade Cargill on Dynamite more, rather than just awesome promos, which is it's good to see they're on AEW every single week, but she's not wrestling on AEW Dynamite every single week. She might get to that point, but in terms of proving that you can escalate not just a representation, just actually featuring somebody, but also a woman, which is the other part that AEW has really struggled with. To show that, no, you can make somebody feel absolutely dominant and kind of give them a main event position on the B show to help elevate them and feel like a big deal, so you can feature them on the A show as a big deal. Because for me, that's the thing with Britt Baker. Was she was not a big deal until she got injured. Had it 100%. With... Who was that she had a feud with again?
Swole.
Was it Swole?
Yeah, it was Swole.
Yeah, she had a feud with Swole. But I was like, I'm going to have to bring that up. It was Swole that, while she was injured, she had months of developing her character. And it was after that she was able to then do more months of getting to titlehood and then feeling like a big deal after the Thunder Rosa match. As in, even Baker's rise wasn't quick. But for me, Cargill is an active decision was made and they went for it. Now all they have to do is that again. It's proof of concept is happening in AEW. It's just the choice to apply it in certain areas hasn't been made as well. So that's where the positive and the critique come in. Like, you've shown me you can do it, and you've shown you can do the exact thing we're talking about. So, yeah, just do it. Yeah, we're not going to Shia LaBeouf the podcast and end with us just do it, just do it. Oh, it's the I know we're talking about like a decade-old meme, but over decade-old meme, but still, it's
still appropriate.
It's
still
the tense thing. It's the tense thing that always got me. It's like, it's that. That's what always got me with that meme. Anyway, he thought he was doing something so. Anyway, the shit on Shia LaBeouf for something he did like 13 years ago. Yeah, we'll get you. Yeah, it may not be soon, but your time will come. Anyway, so I feel like we've bled that one dry because of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that for me, that's a absolutely big one. We've talked about the contracts earlier, and I guess really, I feel like the women's talk fits massively into this same conversation because I feel like Jade Cargill is quite a good kind of spinning off point for the women's situation in AEW, where it feels like an active choice, and I mean, the Queen of the Ring, Alex, forgotten her second name. Was raising a decent question in my eyes. It's just that obviously on Twitter, if you don't read it, if you don't word it perfectly, you get crapped on, which is it sucks when it happens. But for me, it's a decent question of: do you want more matches, or do you want one longer match that means more? But obviously with AEW, when because I can understand that idea of I would probably prefer the one longer one that feels like it means something more rather than quick, snappy, something that, again, Queen of the Ring. That tournament felt like it meant nothing because none of the matches were given any time. They were always really quickly blasted through, like they didn't really matter. Like, production-wise, you're telling me this doesn't really matter because we're blasting through it quickly. The finishes are kind of nothing.
Sure.
Like, through television language, that's what you're telling me. AEW's television language is telling me the pacing of the show normally when it hits their women's match, like you're getting close to this is the kind of downward bit just before the main event. That's also telling me that these aren't that important, which again, it's two different versions of a TV language telling me these matches in this specific division aren't as important as the rest of this other stuff that we're showing you. Both companies in these separate situations were doing the same thing. And that's why I can't praise either. For me personally, WWE's booking of their women's division has been absolutely atrocious in certain areas this year. I have to say certain areas purely because how could I complain about the Bianca Belair run? Again, we talked about this last week. We talked about it on the positive one. just because the breakup element was so incredibly good. For me personally, I don't like the way that she lost the reign purely because it reminded so much of their other Black Champion, how they lost their title. And unless there's a follow-up, which there wasn't for Kofi, which makes me believe there isn't a follow-up for Bianca either, which is a bad thing. Can you prove me wrong? Please prove me wrong.
Well, we'll see Saturday, right?
Yeah, we'll see Saturday. Oh, I love the Rumble. And it's front of a crowd again. Oh, the Thunderdome Rumbles are so weird to watch. I realise how much I hate it, and then I realise, oh wait, no, they're sweetening the crowd now. I also hate that. We haven't got to the production. That's going to have to be a separate thing. For me, there's so much to talk about in terms of storyline, production, type of thing. Especially with my nerdy brain. It's like, oh, why don't you just storyboard things? It's quite a very nerdy reaction to things. But my main point is getting to is both of the companies didn't really feature the women in the best light. I was like, my example is the women's tag team division in WWE. It created a world where there were more matches. So that was the positive on that list of, if you want more matches, an additional title gives a reason for there to be more matches. However, the booking of those matches and the feuds within there were identical from feud to feud to feud for a full year, as in the rhythm was exactly the same. Nothing, nobody really progressed anywhere, and you could predict what would happen week to week for every single feud. And sometimes the champion changed, but it didn't mean anything. Whoever changed hands, the tag team title match was booked exactly the same. Nobody moved up or down from those things. It was always something external if you are going to move or you already were a main event person. And for me, that, it gives an additional match, but through the language of television, you are telling me it doesn't matter. And for me, I guess the big difference is looking at the Queen of the Ring tournament, looking at how AEW book their women most weeks where they're featured before the main event. Then I look at how they book the TBS tournament. And you've shown me you can do this. And that choice to actually then move on to the next thing, that choice has to be made. And yes, it's good to hear that Kenny Omega hasn't stopped banging that drum of please give us more. But obviously the man making the decisions at the top isn't giving them that. And until that thing is actually given, and yes, it's good that Rampage has given them more freedom to do this sort of thing, as in we saw this past week with the TBS Championship being the main event. That is good that you've created this title, you're featuring it, and when it's on the line, it's the main event. That's great. But obviously on Dynamite, there's still only one match, and I'm fine with. I'm not against there being because of course Britt Baker's going to get a promo. There are going to be other things there. But if the only match is a quick something before the main event in the momentum pacing lull of the show, then that's for me why it sticks out. If it's a high point of the show, it's different. Britt Baker Thunder Rosa. Important. But if it's a pre-main event quick nothing, when it feels like the momentum of the show is kind of dying down a bit, you just wait for the main event. In terms of that's telling me that it doesn't matter, and for me that's pretty bad when that's your only match and it feels like a low point in the show.
It's of issues here, and you kind of brought up a question that I think is really interesting to me. What's more important, or what would you prefer? More matches, or one strongly booked solid match for time? And I tend to agree with the more matches issue. And I know you're I'm going to call you a nerd negatively, but you're a TV nerd. And this, think about these things in a way that most people that I've ever met don't. Which is why I love this conversation with you.
If there's anybody younger listening to this, if you go and do film or TV production at university, you will not be able to watch any film or television normally ever again. You will you can't watch something without seeing behind the camera or the process something's made or the way something's scripted. As in, it's not possible. I'm sorry. You can still get immersed. You'll nerd out at great cinematography. You'll be like, that will mean more to you. You watch The Last Night in Soho and be like, oh, it looks amazing. It's just, but you watch WWE and go, did they not storyboard the attack on Roman? What is this? It's so janky, it makes no sense. They've jumped over the line in terms of perspective. What are they doing? So yeah. Anyway, I've jumped in. Continue your point.
But I love that about you because again, it gives me different perspectives because like I know I'm very aware of the P break match or whatever you want to call the come down match of the times when you have them, and I know historically they've been given to women because the thought process was wrestling fans don't care about watching women wrestle. We've changed that, thank God. But like I get those tropes and whatnot, but I don't believe that everything doesn't matter. I think that clearly they don't want things to matter as much, but I think it all matters because if something that doesn't matter to me is right now, like if we're talking about AEW, if Fuego del Sol wrestled tonight, I know tonight isn't AEW, but if there was a match between Fuego del Sol versus JD Drake, and that match happened and the match ended and there's never another conversation about it, there's no backup about it, there's no story with it, that doesn't matter. If this match is part of a story that even if the story is good, bad, or indifferent, is going to be referenced again next week and then the next week, it matters. The biggest issue is it's not very good on WWE's end. That's the biggest issue, right? Which I completely agree with, and which is where the dichotomy comes in, right? So the difference, though, for me is as far as monotone and formulaic as WWE's women's stories are, with the exception of the top story.
Yeah.
The top story they normally put interest in and they do pretty well.
Yeah, big asterisk there because it is that is a positive most times. Well,
yeah, right. A good portion of the time. But the thing is, at least you're seeing them. How Liv Morgan right now is one of the biggest female women stars on Raw right now. Would she be that if we didn't see her in so many of these matches that quote unquote don't matter? And I flip that over to AEW, and Britt Baker has become one of the biggest stars in the company to the point where they're saying she's a builder now, because she's given the platform to be seen, to be used, to now she's in the men's storylines with her boyfriend and that's Pinnacle now, what Paragon or whatever the fuck they call it, Undisputed Era, damn it.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
Just further showing how over she is. Now, while that helps that person, all these other women that don't ever get a chance to wrestle. Serena Deeb quietly has been maybe one of the best women in the entire division. She's never on TV. She's on Dark. She's on Elevation. Layla Hirsch has gotten so good over the past few years. She's never on TV. She's on Dark. She's on Elevation. So like all these people you don't ever see, at least if I was seeing them, even if it was in a squash capacity or a 4 or 5 minute capacity, I'm training my mind to get used to who they are, to get used to their tendencies, to know what their finisher is so I can pop for it when I see it, to know what their comeback is so I know when in the match I should get excited for them trying to come back, to get the nuances of their character so that when I see them do something, I know what's coming next. That's what those matches matter for. AEW doesn't give you that. So while WWE is failing in the fact that their stories are garbage, at least you're seeing these people in these scenarios, and in these and the repetition of it. Now, we've been told Liv is good almost by proxy. She didn't have to wrestle a damn match because we've been told so damn long that Liv is good now. She's next up. And then when she got the opportunity, she knocked it out the park. And people didn't even know she could go like that because you kept seeing her in these small capacities and backstage and in the situation. And so that's why I think the more matches works. Now it can't be either or. You can't do you can't do 3 or 4 4-minute matches on a card and be like, yep, we got them, bro. They're good now. No, it has to be a mixture. But AEW is failing in their women because if you don't watch Dark Elevation,
which I don't,
and let's even I don't either. But if you don't watch Dark Elevation, and by and large you try to catch Rampage, but you can't, but you don't see it every week. Your main viewing of AEW is the 2 hours on Wednesday night, AEW Dynamite. Legitimately. And I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm not trying to sit here and put one over the other. I'm being genuine here. how many women do you know? And more importantly, how many women do you know things about?
That's a Rance out of context clip. Just post onto different reasons. Yeah, it's for me. They're just not given the time, and there's little inklings that they could, but they're not there yet. As in, for example, they've started featuring Dee for the past with a feud with Hikaru Shida. If they actually haven't been on the show,
Right.
there's been a promo. There's been something
Right.
on
I
top
forgot
of
about
Baker's
that, yeah.
one, on top of the match. As in, what I mean is potential for something to go somewhere and do the things we're talking about, but they're not doing yet. They're not doing now. And this is where at the start of the show, like 2.5 hours ago, one of the first
Yeah.
things I said was, we're going to critique, but the end point we're coming back to, and we're going to shit on, and we're going to be in hell with the negatives. But the point is, I'm in fire. I should be screaming. Ah! I don't know how my shadow's going to look on the video. I'll see it in a minute.
It's too late to be screaming now, bro. We tired.
It's 20 to 3 in the morning. It's time to wrap up. But I feel like with a lot of the critiques we've had for AEW, what it keeps coming back to is we're seeing examples of you being able to do it,
Yeah.
but the choice to do it isn't being made. And
Yep.
I feel like in terms of the women specifically, it's continuously I look at it and go, well, I still feel like baby steps are being made, but it's still baby steps. And I feel like at this point, seeing how certain people are being elevated, I think I'm ready for something bigger than that. And I feel like the promotion's ready for something bigger than that. And again, there are really good steps happening in that. In, like, for example, the Lights Out that we saw recently, with TJ winning in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, that's a massive positive because, sure, it was a feud. It wasn't massively. I didn't feel like it was booked or featured that well to feel like it was a big deal. We saw it a lot, which is my main thing with WWE, where you see the same match over and over and get bored within 2-3 weeks. Like they almost did the same, not back to back to back consecutive weeks, but every time you saw them, you knew who the opponent was going to be. You start to tune out a little bit, but they gave a big featured kind of match to a feud that was nothing to do with the title, nothing to do with an already big established name or a former champion. This was just mid-card gets a big heavy featured match. And it's mid-card of the women's division. When I say mid-card, I mean they weren't in a main event, big storyline type thing. They were just people in that division got a big match. But around that is everything else before the match. It's the best way to put it, is a massive negative. But they've shown me by giving them that spotlight that they can do it if they want to. They just have to actually want to.
Can I ask you a quick question about that? Because I tend to agree with you, but I'm just curious to see where you fall on this. Do you think them giving that match is a massive positive? And I ask that because it's one thing to work your way to that moment, and because the story was so good, you've been rewarded with that spot. Like Rosa and Britt.
Yeah.
The story was so good, they earned that spot, right? It's another thing to be given that spot for whatever reason and never get back there again. Do you really think Anna Jay, Tay Conti, Bunny, Allie the Bunny, or whatever you want, whatever she's called tomorrow, and Penelope Ford are gonna be back in? And do you even think they'll be on Dynamite in the next couple of weeks?
I'm not
trying to be disrespectful because the match was good, but more importantly, all four of those women, especially Anna and Tay, are super talented and deserve these positions and opportunities. But that story didn't seem to me like it was worthy of getting that spot. It just got that spot because it felt like, well, we need to give the women something big. We're going to give these women something big and show the world. And it's cool they did, but like, what about tomorrow?
I feel like they filled me with some confidence that they might actually follow up on it when Anna Jay faced Jade Cargo for the TBS Championship this Friday on, and in the main event as well, this Friday in Rampage, but also directly referenced the match itself. as in just reminding you what she did in that match and use that to then integrate into their big main event match. Obviously, we're not seeing it from Conti yet, but Conti had her big shine at Full Gear beforehand.
Right.
So yeah, obviously, when it comes to the Bunny and Ford, they for me felt like their entire job was to elevate Conti and Jay. So that one's, I don't know how to see their elevation, purely because they were essentially enhancement, but their job was to get TJ over, and they did it. So there's not really, I don't know what to expect from them afterwards. In terms of like the women's division as a whole, the way that AEW works, into like it was like MJF's almost entire storyline last year was, I should probably have friends and like a stable or something. Because everyone's and for me, the thing that sticks out in AEW's women's division like a sore thumb is the fact that the other divisions all have that, but the women don't. There are no stables in the women's division, and I feel like they've got an amazing opportunity to form one around Deeb. Like in my head, I'm like, something like Suzuki Gun, but with Deeb would be amazing.
That would be dope. It's interesting you mentioned that, because to this day I still don't think Tay Conti still isn't a part of Dark Order. She's just like the homie.
Yeah, like a loose friend. Yeah, I guess what Baker might be with the Elite, where she's a friend of somebody in the group, but isn't actually part of the group.
Well, and then to your point, that's the one person that probably has a stable.
Yes,
Britt and Reba and Jamie Hayter, fine ass.
Although,
did I say that out loud? Did that come out of my mouth? I'm sorry. I apologize.
That is a surname, right? I'm pretty certain that's.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But the if I can get back on track, brain. But the with that slight association with a group rather than being a part of it. Like for me, would I call J&J Security and Seth Rollins a stable? It's like, the Shield's a stable, a team. Yeah. But some like people with
the Authority was a stable.
Yeah, it's like we're friends and we get along with the team together. But they don't. For me, like a stable, it sounds a bit formulaic, but they got a name, they got an image, a identity about them, a shared identity quite often to kind of help with that image. They can be singles, they can be tagged, but you know that image, that brand is being represented when that is happening. And AEW do a really, really good job with all their different teams and stables in getting that across. But I feel like the women's division needs at least one, and that will make it fit. In my head, Deeb is the prime candidate to lead such a thing. Purely because in that veteran role, you can then have somebody take over the group. She's the perfect person to establish something and then get taken down. Like, she's perfect for that. Obviously, it's AEW. I'm talking about over the course of years. Not like New Japan did it with, Suzuki Gun actually. I just realised the comparison. It was originally called Kojima-kun. Because
and he took out.
Yeah. And Suzuki took him out, took over the group, and then it was Suzuki Gun. And for me, Deeb is a prime candidate to elevate somebody in the company. It has to be a heel, obviously, for this to work. We can use her to elevate somebody to a stable leader. And a main point being, there are loads of things you can do with stables, but there aren't any in the women's division. In a company defined by stables, there are no stables in the women's division. Yep. And in terms of like caring and focus and attention to a division, we were talking about that earlier. It's like, this is it, like here. Like something you give everywhere else, but it's not here. Why is it not here? And the opportunity's there as well. If they turn Lady Hirsch heel, guess who's my number one candidate to join Serena Deeb's stable? I've made
that she'd be the perfect person. Yeah. She was what I was thinking. She'd be perfect.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, that's in terms of like critique. That's the thing I would do, is just to give that depth to the division, and then you got your perfect reason to get people featured without featuring them, which is what stables do so incredibly well. Orange Cassidy doesn't have to have a match; he just stands at ringside and exists. He's on the show. He's doing stuff. So you can do that with anybody.
Way, shout out to that beach brawl down there in Cleveland.
Oh yes, that video is amazing.
And brawling on the beaches of Cleveland. Yeah, shout out to that.
In January, no. And Cole's in his underpants. Like, good God.
Man, yeah. When I saw him walking up, I was like, wow. And the people likened it to that episode. What was it, Days of Thunder or whatever the show was with Hulk, where it
Oh
was
yes,
Hulk and Flair and Sting, and it was like
I immediately thought of this
Vader
when I
and
saw it.
Sid. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's hilarious.
And followed second by Brock Lesnar F5ing a shark. Like, these are the beach wrestling things.
That's right. He created Sharknado. That's right.
Yeah. Finally we got a new wrestling at the beach thing added to the list of like 2 things. Finally got a third thing. Adam Cole freezing his nips off walking down a beach in January in Cleveland. Poor man. Poor man. At least between takes, Orange Cassidy can do up his denim jacket. Good God. Anyway, so I think we said earlier that we might do a quick fire just of things I feel like that should. I mean, we did this at the end of last week, where it's just like quick fire things to be kind of brought up. I guess you brought up production earlier to both companies, and for me personally, with WWE, in terms of the production, there's multiple things, but I guess realistically top of the list is, now that crowds are back, stop with the crowd sweetening. This isn't America's Got Talent. You're not recorded. You're not controlling the crowd to that degree. For me, if you're sweetening a crowd to the level they currently are with Raw, I don't really feel it with SmackDown as much. Maybe that's just because Raw feels more difficult to get through, so you notice it more.
Sure.
Show. But because they've always done crowd sweetening, but for me, it's if you're going to do it, you have to mix it well, and that's the biggest kind of critique I've got with them, is the kind of crowd sweetening, the mixing that they do. It's so blatant when they're doing it. It just takes me out of what they're doing. As I said before, I can't watch shows normally because of what I went through. The years of being able to just watch a show and enjoy it drilled out of me. Watching depressing thing after depressing thing. This is how you get emotion out of things. Yeah, but I can't watch anything normal now. Thanks, Muscle. But I shouldn't shit on him. He's a great guy. But he introduced me to John Hurt. Why would I ever crap on him? But the point that I'm getting to is that if you're going to do it, just make sure you're doing it well. And they're not even doing that. They're just playing the noise over the top. You hear the track end. There's an audible thing. It's just like, oh my word, like, and this is going out on national television. That's insane for me. Just for the level of crowd sweetening to be so blatantly bad. For me, it's the worst hangover from the Thunderdome era.
The Thunderdome.
Like, it worked in there, and I really like the idea. I saw different sports, I think, doing a similar idea of what we've got all these video games with all of this crowd sound already there. And of course, WWE, the way they record it, they had so much crowd noise just available. It's like, yeah, makes sense to do that. But now crowds are back, now that they're still sweetening, for me, that's an absolutely massive negative on production. It's just...
Yeah.
For me, it's a bad habit that I feel like they wanted to do way before the Thunderdome era, because you would hear crowd sweetening beforehand. But now it's so everywhere and so bad. Want it gone. It's just, for me, it's... Because there's things like the quick cuts of Kevin Dunn, but as long as he's there, they're not going to go.
That's part of the whole thing. Yeah, I know, and it's
but
it's the thing.
Yeah, the crowd sweetening for me has to stop. It's a hangover habit. It's the habit the cruise ship singers picked up because he's not had anyone professional be like, maybe don't. So, yeah. Not to go Larry David, but maybe. Right, have you got any quick fire things?
Yes, from a production standpoint, I have 2 major ones. Number 1, zombies.
Product integration. So naturally done.
I don't mind product integration. Like, and don't get me wrong, I didn't hate it, but it was bad. Just like I didn't hate the egg from Red Notice, but it was bad.
Oh, the egg saved that. No, it saved Monday Night Raw the night before, because suddenly, Monday Night Raw after, because you're like, what are they going to do with the egg?
And the other one is, and this is production issues, and this is part storyline too, because I know we got some storyline stuff too that we want to quick hit. But Demon Finn Balor losing because the rope fell off. That's just WWE wise. AEW has a lot more for me, like the exploding barbed wire match, which was fantastic for 99%, and then whatever happened, and my boy Eddie Kingston had to fix it. Jericho falling and them showing the wrong angle, even though he really messed up his elbow.
Oh yeah,
like the angle did not make it look very very good. All of the continually missing spots, continually showing botches, being in the wrong angles. Both companies do better in the production, and it's not the most. The barbed wire match was horribly egregious because that sold a pay-per-view.
Oh yeah.
And like the worst thing you could do for a show is end the show with the bad taste in your mouth, because unfortunately that match and that show was really good, but I remember it as a bad show because that ended so horribly.
Which absolutely sucks, given as well the main event, the match itself is amazing.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the Eddie Kingston beat is one of my when he runs out, that's one of the biggest emotions I've ever had watching wrestling. When Eddie Kingston came out to make that save right at the end.
Have you ever seen the Onita matches in FMW?
Yes. That was, he would walk out the ring and then run back to save.
Yes,
he did it with
a love letter to Onita.
Yeah.
Terry
Funk. That's what I'm trying to remember. Yeah. I was like, he's done it with a Japanese wrestler as well, but Terry Funk's the main one.
Hayabusa. He did it with Hayabusa before Hayabusa got hurt, didn't he?
Oh yeah, because
Hayabusa was like the next up.
Yeah. So oh no, tangent. I was gonna say, because I know quite a bit about I was about to say OVW, but that was the WWE production. It's not developmental. Yeah, I realised it could be a massive tangent because once I start that story, I want to tell the whole thing. So no.
Okay.
I will say the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Onita really covered like all of this history, which is awesome. It's kind of like look into with the Hayabusa and the way that they told that story. Because I for research I watched Onita Hayabusa in an electrified steel cage type of thing, and yes, those beats are all there. It's just to bring that emotion out of the crowd. It's so damn perfect, and then the bloody pyro doesn't work. And obviously, as an entertainment thing, I don't really care why it didn't work. All I'm like, your entire thing is ruined now. Like whatever story you're trying to tell, dead. And I felt like in the aftermath they did really well in terms of like on-screen storylines. Like they handled that incredibly.
Eddie Kingston saved their ass. And it's funny because for as bad as the whole thing was, Eddie fucked it up that night because he sold it. If he would have sold it after it was over and been like, oh, that was it, and like played it off, it wouldn't have been so bad. But the fact that he acted like he had been like through like a fucking atomic bomb,
it'd be like kind of peeled off kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. But he fixed it the next night,
And obviously on the night Moxley did, but it was off air at that point. Just so. So yeah.
Also, one more, and actually, cinematically this was good, but it was pretty ridiculous. The entire Fiend versus Randy Orton story. Cinematically, like the spot when he turns on fire and stuff, like cinematically it looked dope, but like it was a bit ridiculous.
I will say that I have a bit of a bias towards the fire thing because that was the highest number I've ever had doing this.
Oh, really?
Like, quite genuinely, the number that I saw for the actual interaction from the page for this show, it was on like 7,000. In terms of like wrestling headlines and stats I was getting from them. And I was just like, so a slight bias that all WWE had to do was set a man on fire and people would just want to talk about it. That's all they had to do.
No big deal, right?
Yeah, and I loved the idea of essentially Jason from the Friday the 13th movies, but in wrestling form, where from the slasher movies where essentially the beat of it is you've got them killed, and but then they spring up anyway. They spring up. They're like they're gonna get one final beat. They just you set them on fire. They're down like they're out, and then they jump up whilst on fire and chase you for a second before actually falling because they are on fire. And I really love that. And for me, my critique into this specific thing, kind of because it's one of the things where I was like, you know what, it's the Thunderdome era. They can do this whilst they're in the Thunderdome, and I could call it silly or whatever. But obviously, look at the merch; it's appealing to somebody. So I didn't want to critique it too much.
Right, not the fire part was dope, but I mean, I'm talking all the story tropes. Like there was the one where Alexa was sitting in the pentagram and dropped the goo from her mouth. Like there was some terrible, like production cinematic things in that story.
Yes, 100%. For me, that falls into my main critique for WWE, and it falls into an Alexa Bliss tweet, or maybe two Alexa Bliss tweets, because I think she did it again recently. So
okay.
It quite often gets brought out of the phrase of, "Oh, just be patient, let it play out." And I know quite so. Yeah. Which is absolutely fine if there is a plan that is playing out. The other Alexa Bliss quote was from like the start of the Fiend thing when she was talking about how much fun she was having playing this role, like nearest the start of it when they were on SmackDown. And one thing she was saying was, well, what's really, really good about it is week to week, we don't know what's going to be happening next. We don't know what's going to happen. You turn up and it could go anywhere with it. It was really, really exciting. To which I'm like, so you're saying there is no plan. You're making it up week to week. And that's really exciting for this kind of character, which I 100% agree is good. However, I can't then be patient and wait for it to play out because you're making it up week to week. Which, again, is absolutely fine. Like for example, I wouldn't be surprised if there are certain feeds on AEW that do that exact thing. There isn't a 3-year through line for every single story, and that is fine. However, when the majority of your stories are then written like that, then we've got a problem because I personally need to feel like it's going somewhere. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. So in terms of. So for me, I was perfectly fine with the Bliss Fiend stuff on SmackDown being like that. The second they told us through the language of television that the Fiend Randy Orton will be going from here to WrestleMania, essentially, it'll go for a while, and don't wait, just be patient. There is going to be this end point of WrestleMania. We watched what happened. Just watching the show, you knew. From almost week to week, they had absolutely no idea what they were going to do next. And that's why it becomes so incredibly wild. They sometimes, obviously, you set something up because you know you're going to do something the next week. Or WWE quite often have been critiqued for what's called the 3-week push of something, be it an idea or a wrestler or gimmick or whatever. And for what I mean by knowing where you're going to the end point, and it's so opposite to what we see in AEW, where with this, where it was one feud start and end point, they had absolutely no idea what they were going to end on, what anything was, but they knew they had cool ideas floating about, but they never knew week to week what they were going to be doing, which again is fine for certain feuds. But then I'm not going to watch it with my mindset of letting it play out. I'm going to watch it with what random bollocks are they going to do this week? Which is entertaining in its own different way, but it's not entertaining in the watching a story play out kind of way, because it's not a story playing out. It's random bollocks week to week, which is, again, entertaining for a different way.
I love when we talk about this because I so vehemently disagree with that entire point. But I see I get where you come from.
I think we've had this discussion before. Yeah.
Many times they're clearly flying by the seat of their pants. but I do think there's always a point they're trying to make, but things change. Like that Bray Wyatt Fiend Randy Orton feud. In the middle of that was when Brody passed, and we didn't see Bray on screen for like 2-3 months. That's the reason Alexa became the proxy, because he was gone. So, like, I'm sure there was a plan, and then once he's gone, injured or out because of how, an emotional issue or whatever it is, you got to change it, right? And I think ultimately the issue, and this is something that I acknowledge to anybody I talk to, for better or for worse, more than likely for worse, trust Vince from a WWE wrestling standpoint. Whether I like it or I don't, I trust that he's going to tell me something that makes sense to me. I know for 1,000,000% of the way that I am not everybody else. But in the same way that people who love New Japan can tell me that there's all this story with no promos, no backstage interviews, no segments, just matches. Well, this time he put his hand on his shoulder, which means this now. And this time he used this move instead of this move, which means this because in 2019 he did that. The same way people can do that is the same way I can decipher things from in the story that matters. Now, not every story plays to that point, but there's a lot more than I think people give credit for. And again, I acknowledge wholeheartedly, happily to you, to the world. I know I am the anomaly. I know that. But so I trust Vince, and I trust what I'm being told. Much like in AEW, fans trust what they're being told, which is why even when something comes up looks stupid or crazy, we trust that. Well, no, it's gonna get itself together. And I know so many wrestling fans don't trust what Vince is giving them, which is why they feel the way that you feel. I completely get that. I'm just the opposite, and I know. And I'm not speaking to you particularly because me and you talk enough to know for me to know that you're not like this. But a lot of fans look at it from the beginning to the end and the enjoyment of it and say this is what it was. They don't care if something happened, if a guy got injured, or if a guy was out for a week, or if a guy got suspended, or something happened. There was a firing of a person that was. People don't care. Well, you know what? It wasn't good. The Fiend versus Randy Orton was a feud that needed the Fiend to be there regularly, or Bray Wyatt to be there regularly, and for a good 2 months he wasn't. That changed the entirety of the feud, which is the whole reason why, in my opinion, why Alexa had to run so deep with the gimmick, and why they decided in a feud that was completely built for the Fiend to win, why they decided to go with Alexa, with Randy beating the Fiend and Alexa kind of taking his power, because they needed to run with the story, and they had to give 2-3 months of this story that's between these two guys that have been feuding and around each other for years, going back to 33 with the Wyatt family when Randy infiltrated them and burned down Sister Abigail's house, or the barn, right, or whatever it was. Going way back to that point, all this story between these two human beings, right? All this story and all this history between these two, and Alexa had to jump in and be the main proxy for this feud for months, to the point where there was an advertised match between Randy and Alexa on a pay-per-view before WrestleMania. She's got to continue to go with the story now. Now the story has to be about her and less about the Fiend, because you can't put her in this and then pull her out and be like, all right, well, I'll go do something else now. Not too dissimilar from when you had Punk, Bryan, Kane, and Cena all revolved around AJ. AJ did the best out of all of that because she took that and was able to be at the top of the company, because it was all revolved around her. You can't then remove her and be like, all right, go do whatever you were doing now. So no, well, now she's made the general manager. Now she's in major stories with all these people. Now we have a triple threat title match, basically based around the fact that AJ kissed all three of these dudes. You know what I mean? Because you can't just pull her out now when you put her there in a situation. So I just would like for no, I'm not talking about you, because we've talked enough that I know that you think about these things. But I would just like for fans to be more cognizant and aware and accepting and understanding of these major breaks in storytelling when you think of, oh, well, this story sucked. All right, well, yeah, it wasn't good, but why was it not good? Was it not good just because, excuse me, they gave you something you didn't like? Or was it not good because, like you said, you can see a very clear idea they're trying to give you, and then it massively had to change out of nowhere because of this?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I feel like this whole storyline is such a great. I realise we can just bash out so many of the quick things we've got just with this one feud. It's really, really useful.
Yeah.
But Yeah, as I said, been able to bash out the cinematography, the production stuff. With been able to bash out the kind of telling a story week to week. Because again, for me, the Fiend is absolutely fine to tell a story that or the idea whatever Alexa's going to be, like what they're doing currently with Alexa Bliss. If because of course they filmed all of these before and now they're featuring them week to week, meaning they're not making this up week to week. To be fair, they still could have made it up in a week, but it feels progressive. Like it's to be fair, all stories are made up within a certain amount of time, and then that's all that was. But the point being that they filmed it with the idea of releasing it one week to the other. Therefore, they all lead and build into each other, which is progressive weekly storytelling, which you wouldn't have seen from because in my head the era. And again, don't forget. I'm somebody who can't watch television normally. I have to think from a production side. When I was watching the build-up to... The Fire was at TLC, yeah. So, for me, my peak kind of era of kind of critiquing what the feud was like is that run to TLC. Afterwards, I'm a hell of a lot more forgiving because of what happened. It makes so...
Fair.
Yes, I understand. And of course, for wasn't the wacky bollocks happening in the Thunderdome silly? Yeah, but it was a unique time, and they could do it. They can't do it now, obviously. That was my other question: was what are they going to do when Alexa Bliss, when it comes to the main like a live shows again? And the answer was it didn't work. But they tried stuff out.
Yeah.
They tried things.
Yeah.
Some of them were silly, winking doll at Doudrop, but Shayna Baszler.
Or terrified the hell out of Shayna was another one. My God.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but they tried to translate it from the Thunderdome era to this one. It just didn't work. So I'm a lot more forgiving of like when it became a lot more focused on Bliss because of obvious things, and of course they were throwing crap at the wall, seeing what stuck. Yep. But in the build-up to TLC, where there is very clearly an arc happening, when you watch Raw, it felt like it was made up week to week, and they didn't actually know how they were going to get to that point, and it didn't feel like the Fiend on Fire was a progressed to and earned point. It was cool as hell. But it felt like it was established the week of it happening, in terms of we might be doing this thing, which is a shame, really, because it was such a cool moment. And I only remember this because I had to make copious amounts of notes for the reviews, things. So I remember kind of what I put down. But it was just that thing of this could have been really good if you'd sat down a month before and thought out like a through line kind of path to it. But you didn't really, and he more fell on the Fiend on Fire than decided a month ago this will be really cool. How do we build to it? No, you more fell on it in type of like a week to week thing, which again is perfectly fine if it was, for example, like the Fiend was on SmackDown, where it kind of played to that nature. And what helps was he wasn't on the show every week, and if he was, it was like a lot of Funhouse stuff. That really does play to making it up week to week. That's fine. That works. But when you're trying to tell a longer story and presenting it as if it is a longer story that's happening, cough, cough, Naomi and Sonya Deville, that is not a long-term story. And that is one story beat repeated every single week for months. That a long-term story goes somewhere. It's finally going somewhere now, but the explanation doesn't make any sense because they didn't think there wasn't an explanation when they first started it.
I'd flip that. I still think it's a long-term story, but the reason my critique would be that it's been, you said it yourself, it's been the same thing. Had there been small little changes in it, then I think it would have been more of a story. But you can't do the same thing every week and every week and nothing changes. Like had Adam Pearce noticed something and said something one week, and then something happened, or said this and that, like then this, or she almost gets caught, but then she realizes, like the best thing happened in that feud was when they were like, man, it's really cold in here. Now it's really hot in here.
Or was that last
and
week?
She took her jacket off. That was 2 weeks ago.
Right.
2 weeks ago. And Naomi was like, what's up now? Your jacket off. Like, that's the best thing happened in that story, because that's the first time something other than Naomi wants a match, Naomi gets screwed, move on. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah. By the way, I think that ends at WrestleMania. I think they finished that match story.
Hopefully that, or I could see them blowing it off at an earlier pay-per-view, or even
probably more likely.
Yeah, I'd like it to get that longer run because that means it would be going somewhere hopefully and shifting about, and the Rumble's the a great. He can set up so many WrestleMania stuff at the Royal Rumble. I realised this is suddenly Royal Rumble's prediction video. I need to come off that step. But for me, it kind of leads off the point I was making of things not being the same and just way too much similarity. The Thunderdome era was definitely worse. So this is more critique on the first half of the year, but it still happened in certain areas on the card. It happened this week on Raw. I mean, last night, where we got Damian Priest versus Kevin Owens in a very similar beat as to last week again, where Damian Priest loses the match via DQ after raging. But that's exactly how last week ended, and they did it again this week.
Well, last week did it in that way. Last week Kevin Owens pinned him with the stunner.
I completely forgot that. I mixed it. I've mixed it in with the Dolph Ziggler feud. Is what I've done. That's what I've done.
Every match that Damian's had since he became New School Aleister Black, essentially, because the parallels between Aleister Black's character and this character are so fucking similar, even down to the beginning riff of the music. But that's another conversation. But every one of those matches that's either ended with Priest winning or Priest raging out because someone pissed him off. So it was really nice to see Owens actually beat him fairly clean because he didn't cheat. He just was feigned to be hurt. Ref tended to him, and then he kicked him, stunned him, and then ran out the ring. So which led to this match, which was a breath of fresh air to me because it was, like you said, something different.
Yeah, and for me that's both a positive and a negative because I like them doing what Kevin Owens for me is a big positive, and I like with Damian Priest they're trying to protect his wins even if I don't like using DQs to do it. For me, the reason the DQ doesn't work is because the person who gets a DQ doesn't look good coming off of it. Yes, you technically protected their run, but unless you let that person absolutely destroy the person in front of them, they look a bit like an idiot for losing it in the match. And WWE has a massive problem of making their good guys look like idiots. Quite often it's just because they have to do an attack beat. So for the plot, there has to be an attack there.
Yeah.
But the person's got to stand around to get the attacks. They look a bit like an idiot at the time. So I've realised we're massively overrunning. So I'm going to try and kind of wrap up my kind of final thoughts with it. Because the Kevin Owens Priest thing does kind of hit something as well, where Priest was undefeated and then he's just not anymore. That thing that has been building since his debut, that was his first loss last week, and it's on a nothing bit on Raw, really. It's not brought up this week. That it is in them doing such when there is long-term story, when there's a long-term thing that you think is happening, more often it's with that. For me, it's kind of a little showing that they're still protecting him, they're still keeping him strong, which is a positive. Because it's nice to see a character in the middle of a WWE show being kept that strong, because that is rare. For him to not be really losing random matches on Raw, for him, the reason they came up with the DQ thing is to keep him protected, and that is great to see.
He's losing matches. He's just not being pinned.
Yeah, and that's why
they
Kevin
made a big
Owens
deal of him being pinned. They made a big deal of it, he actually beat him. They made a bigger deal than you think they did.
Okay, I must have been taking notes.
Don't make me stick up for these guys on this episode, not this episode.
Yeah. I was like, I'll bring this up because I'm pretty sure they didn't say anything. It's like, I'm pretty sure they said something. I was like, did I just miss that? That was writing my words, making my notes down.
And to be fair, Monday Night Raw is a slog to get through, and at the time you watched that, I don't blame you for missing shit.
Oh yeah, because that's one thing I will say about this. I mean, this might just bring us to the end. Well, I will say in terms of little critiques and things. Obviously, you miss things when you watch the show anyway. I've said this for all reviewers on the internet of things, because you are also writing at the same time, and now and then if you just miss things. It just happens. Yeah. So there may have been a little thing a commentary person said. I remembered my final critique. My final critique is the scripting for WWE. People don't feel real. None of it feels natural, and. I know over the years different reasons for that have been given. Some believe it's purely the scripting. Some believe it's because they try to pigeonhole people into certain ways of talking or whatever. For me, personally, when I say it comes down to production, I'm including the directing, and we know who directs these scenes. It's Vince McMahon.
Yes.
And that brings us back to the boss man. And he wants it like this. But that also means that... And you can tell when an episode of Raw has been thought about a bit more. Because if you're watching a backstage segment, it feels a bit less stilted. As in, the people are a bit less walking to their mark, standing still, saying their line, moving on. As in, there's been some absolutely horrific backstage segments this past year, which you can tell the worst ones are when they've been produced quickly. As in, we just need something, let's just do it. And I had a few tweets. Because I gift the crab walk. I did the gif of the crab walk of him walking into Riddle, and
poor Kevin.
And everybody shared it. And I'm just like, I produced something this year. I may look back at this year and go, oh god, I didn't do anything. I made that gif, so I've got that. But yeah, so the things like that, where if you think about it, you just choose a different shot. But because they're rushing it, that these things slip through the cracks. And with time and with just attention, you will not have you will think, oh yeah, it's a nice shot of Riddle. But when the interviewer walks in, you can see him walking like a crab, which you do not want in the shot. And this has happened in WWE for years. Josh Matthews was filmed doing it, and Todd, what's his face, has now gone to Impact.
Tom Phillips.
Tom Phillips. Is he called
Tom
Todd?
Hannafan?
Tom Hannafan. That's it. Yeah. So this is not a new trait for WWE, but it's the amount it's been happening has increased this past year or so. Which in the Thunderdome era, again, I'm a lot more forgiving for the Thunderdome era, but they're happening now, not in the Thunderdome era, where these production mishaps. When I say they're production mishaps, they're filmed purposefully like this. This isn't like something falling over. It's not an accident. This is just not thinking about it and taking your time, rushing things through, which in the Thunderdome era is very understandable given the situation we were all in.
Sure.
In this era, the mistakes are more regular. And that's worrying, because that tells me a lack of attention to detail, which bleeds into the whole product. It's just an example of a lack of attention to detail. And that can go into storylines, that can go into presentations. Does the commentator sound like an actual human when he says this? All of this stuff kind of just... It's emblematic of the whole entirety of WWE. Me looking at this one thing. Because it bleeds everywhere. If you're not paying attention to detail here, you're not paying attention to detail for the rest of your product. Because obviously you are on some things, but there will be multiple examples of things falling through the cracks. And I feel like that is my final thing with WWE. My final kind of wrapping up statement. It's just that. Just take your time and think about things. You don't. I mean, I'm talking about a man who changes the script as the show is on air and it's being written as it's airing. But obviously, all of these things are fixed if you just think and plan. You don't have to do it all in 1 week. You can plan a month's worth of stuff ahead of time. It's all doable.
Yeah.
What we talked about last week with AEW in the positives, where they had every member of the Dark Order in their hometowns facing Daniel Bryan, so Daniel Bryan could beat all the baby faces in their hometown, which is amazing. As a former WWE guy, coming and doing that. But it only sounds like a big. How do they pull that off to get all them in order? It's like, well, no, you control all of the story that you'll put in there. You control. It's really not that big. If you know you're going to do it, you can just plan to do it. It's not that big a leap. We just live.
Sounds easier. Sounds easy because it is.
Yeah, which is how I describe WWE in terms of they're making it more difficult than it has to be. But yeah. Anyway, any parting phrases from Ray Rance? I'm not going to call you that again. I tried it out.
Hey, Ray Rance, I'm with it. No, man, thank you for having me. Just one last bow. Hurt Business and Retribution. Wow. That's my last thought on the negatives. Yeah. But no, man, I appreciate you having me. And this is, the word I can use for this. I think that's appropriate. This is cathartic.
Oh yeah, we said that last time. I'm happy the negative one has also been cathartic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you're purging this from your spirit.
Yes. Yeah. Just nice to just get it off the chest. It's like, oh, yes. Yeah. I've been exercised of our wrestling demons that we can enter the new year all vested with respite and ready. It's like, oh man. Anyway, do you want to plug all of your stuff before we shoot off?
Well, thank you, sir. I am on Twitter at It's Ray Cash. That's REY as in Mysterio, CASH as in dollars. I have a ton of shows on the Chairshot Radio Network. That's at thechairshot.com. Yeah, man. And if you into buying shirts, we got shirts at the Chairshot. Go to prowrestlingtees.com/thechairshot. Check your boy out. 3-Man Weave, the sports show. Bandwagon Nerds, the entertainment show. I am on Badlands, What Ifs with my boy Mags and Paul Tully. I have my show, The Outsider's Edge. Yeah, I'm everywhere, bro. So you can find me all the time. Just go over there and press play, and you wait about an hour, I'll pop up.
And I am on Twitter at the Damn Implicat, damn as in damn, and the implications over on Twitch with 2 S's. I'll probably stream at some point. Also, columns over at Wrestling Headlines to get all your latest wrestling news, and also just so many other columnists posting awesome, great stuff. If you want to go and watch that. And I will be back. I feel like I'm forgetting to plug something, but I'm just going to move on. I will be back on Thursday for the AEW review. I need to check who my guest is. But yeah, I'll be back on Thursday for the AEW review. On Saturday, I'll be live immediately following the Royal Rumble with the Wrestling Headlines After Shock. So if you want to join a very sleepy British person who's hopefully enjoyed a good show, then I'll be live immediately after that. And also, Hustle will be posting his column as soon as the show ends as well. So you got you both. You got your written form and your visual audio form as well. Got you covered. And with that, I say, for this enormous episode, which, again, we had to really cut what we wanted to say about production and stuff, creative, and really, just because there just really wasn't time. We cut it down to like a 30-minute thing on it, but still, this is a mammoth episode. So if you're here from the start, or even if you've chipped your way through it, thank you. You're crazy. You're a madman. Yeah.
We love you, though.
Yes. You could have watched Lord of the Rings, but no. You went with us instead.
We're coming in right about the same amount of time as a Lord of the Rings movie. That's a long fucking podcast.
I've, again, not hit the keeping it strong style 4 hours yet, but there's...
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Anyway, so yes, I'll be back around then. So with that, I say thank you for watching, liking, engaging in any form, any manner. Always appreciated, never taken for granted. And with that, thank you for watching. Bid you adieu. Adios.